Chapter 799. The man was rather handsome. However, a wisp of gloominess appeared between his brows when he recognized Lin Sun, and a strand of indescribable rage or fear surged in his heart. The man was none other than Mo Feng, the descendant of Lingji sect. When they were participating in the sect's trial on Mount Violet Ox, they were repeatedly teased by Lin Sun because of an apology, and they were so depressed and furious that they almost spat blood. But in the end, they still admitted defeat and didn't dare take revenge. Because even Yu Jianming greatly appreciated Lin Sun, so how could they have the courage to take revenge under such circumstances? However, Mo Feng had never imagined that he would actually encounter Lin Sun again in Yindu. "You know this kid?" The old man beside him spoke. He wore a sapphire blue Taoist robe, and his hair was coiled into a bun. His skin was glistening and smooth like a baby's, and he seemed like a sage. His name was Han Yenke, an elder of Lingji sect at the upper stage of the reincarnation developing realm. At the same time, he was Mo Feng's master. "Yes." Mo Feng nodded. He thought for a moment and said bitterly, "Master, the reason our Lingji sect was ranked at the bottom in the sect competition a few days ago was because we were disturbed by this person during the trial." When he spoke up to hear, a wisp of deep guilt surged out from Mo Feng's heart, and he said, "Now that I think about it, it was our fault in the first place. We inadvertently offended him, and caused such a disaster. So it was because of this kid. That makes sense." Han Yenke had a strange expression on his face, and his voice carried an indescribable tone. This stunned Mo Feng. He'd originally thought that Han Yenke would definitely be infuriated or reprimand him, but he'd never imagined that he would have such a reaction. The most astounding thing was that Han Yenke actually raised his hand and patted his shoulder in the next moment, and he comforted him warmly. "It's not a loss for all of you to lose to him. This kid's combat strength is extremely terrifying and ferocious. It's already very good that he didn't kill all of you." Mo Feng was slightly stunned. What's going on? Why has the master, who's usually extremely strict, become so easy to talk to? Moreover, he's comforting me for the first time. Mo Feng had the urge to cry. How many years has it been since my master, who's always been strict to me, comforted me like this? At this moment, Han Yang's emotions were incomparably complicated. He had seen Lin Sun before. At the foot of Starfall Peak, he had seen with his own eyes how Lin Sun showed great power and climbed up Starfall Peak. Almost no one dared to stop him along the way. The most incredible thing was that even old monster Ku Ting failed to kill the young man in the end. Moreover, the young man escaped with a treasure ship that seemed to be a holy artifact. Under such circumstances, he naturally understood when he found out that his disciple had been played by Lin Sun. Because he knew very well that it was utterly impossible for Mo Feng to be a match for that young man. Suddenly, Han Yenke suddenly recalled something. The treasured vessel in the young man's possession was a miraculous and unfathomable treasure, and it seemed to be a saint artifact of legend. It was even capable of avoiding the suppression of the ancient divine formation on Starfall Peak. When he thought up to here, a wisp of greed couldn't help but surge into Han Yang's heart, and he instructed right away. "You stay here and keep a close eye on this kid. I have urgent matters to attend to, so I'll return to the sect first." He had to return to the sect to discuss it with the higher-ups of the sect. If he was able to seize this opportunity to seize a saint artifact for the sect, then it would absolutely not be inferior to obtaining an enormous fortune. A saint artifact possessed extraordinary and peerless divine might and was boundlessly terrifying. If he was able to obtain it, then it would absolutely be able to allow his sect to become eminent amongst the 4 sects and 3 clans and become the true overlord of the Firesoul Prefecture. I must make the best use of my time. I can't miss this opportunity. The more Han Yenke thought about it, the more the greed in his heart burned, and he showed signs of being unable to control himself. He wished for nothing more than to make a move right away. But he restrained himself in the end because he knew that he couldn't forget this matter, and he had to make a meticulous plan. After all, that young man seemed to be only at the heavenly insight realm, yet he was able to escape old monster Ku Ting's attack. If he was unable to capture the young man with a single strike, then the consequences would truly be difficult to predict. Master, what are you doing? Mo Feng wasn't an idiot. Since he was able to become an outstanding figure in the younger generation of the Lingji sect, then in terms of natural talent and wisdom, ordinary cultivators were far from being able to compare to him. At the first possible moment, he'd noticed that his master's decision at this moment was probably related to Lin Sun, who'd just entered the Pine Mist Dojo. You don't have to know about all of this. You just have to keep a close eye on that young man and keep track of his tracks at all times. Remember, you must not alert him. Han Yenke instructed in a solemn manner before leaving hastily. On the other hand, Mo Feng's heart jerked when he saw this, and a wisp of a bad premonition surged into his heart. Master seems to be returning to the sect to ask for assistance to deal with that young man? He took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart, and then he suddenly gritted his teeth and flashed into the Pine Mist Dojo. Pine Mist Dojo. At the resting area, a young woman with a graceful figure and a chilly bearing sat silently at the corner. She wore a black dress, and a mask that was silver like snow covered the upper half of her face, and only a wisp of perfectly curved and plump red lips and a sharp chin that was snow-white and crystalline were revealed. She sat there casually, causing her to seem cold and mysterious, and her clear eyes were crystalline and translucent like gems and tranquil like the water of a lake. Young miss, hiding here isn't a solution. All the elders of the sect are anxiously waiting for you to return. An azure-clothed old woman at the side sighed lightly and was slightly helpless. I've said since the beginning that I won't meet anyone before the battle of the world, but they just wouldn't listen. Since it's like this, then let them have a headache. The young woman spoke casually with a voice that was chilly like snow and melodious like the sound of nature. Her words were spoken casually, yet it carried a charm that caused others to be unable to go against her. This caused her to possess a terrifying imposing aura, and even if she sat there casually, she still emanated a lonely feeling that caused others to be unable to disrespect her. The azure-clothed old woman felt even more helpless, but she seemed to dote on the young woman before her, and she wanted to speak yet hesitated many times before stopping in the end. I'm very angry. Suddenly, the young woman sat up straight while a wisp of rage shot out from her eyes that were clear and brilliant like the stars. I was just a little bit away from being able to uncover the expert that was hiding within the ancient sacred formation on Starfall Peak, but he still escaped in the end. She puckered her plump red lips while her entire body emanated a piercingly cold and bone-piercing aura. Since I started cultivating until now, it's the first time I've failed. If I find out who that fellow is, then I'll surely give him a beating. The azure-clothed old woman seemed to be slightly anxious and hurriedly said, Young miss, Starfall Peak has already vanished. This matter is in the past, but you must not get into a dead end. Oh, replied the young woman before standing up. At that instant she was like a lotus that had emerged from the water, and her graceful figure was completely revealed. Her legs were long and slender, her waist was slender, and even her black dress was unable to conceal the perfect lines of her figure. On her face, even though half of her peerless face was covered by a mask, one could see that this young lady possessed a beauty that could stun the world just by looking at her translucent skin, tall nose bridge, and curved, plump red lip. This was a type of aura that was chilly like snow, tranquil, and otherworldly. It was extremely unique and striking, and it caused others to feel ashamed of their inferiority and not dare arouse a trace of disrespect towards her from afar. Young miss, what do you intend to do? The azure-clothed old woman was stunned. I'm naturally going to ascend the arena to have some fun, said the young woman casually. You intend to fight with other cultivators here? The azure-clothed old woman was flabbergasted and speechless. She was too clearly aware of how terrifying the resources and reserves possessed by this young woman were. Not to mention this tiny martial arena, not to mention the Fire Spirit Prefecture, even amongst the younger generation of the entire Westlake world, there were absolutely only a handful of people that possessed the qualifications to be a match for this young woman. But now, she intended to ascend the arena to fight with other cultivators in a martial arena that could only be considered as a first class in Yen capital. This made the others slightly at a loss whether to laugh or cry. I'm just playing. Otherwise, I'll be too depressed in my heart and I have to vent it. The young woman in a black dress spoke casually, and then she flashed swiftly towards the distance. Her figure was like a solitary swan that stood out from the crowd, and she had an otherworldly and aloof feeling. It's good to have some fun. If I can vent the depression in my heart, then perhaps I'll change my mind and return to the sect. The azure-clothed old woman pondered. Bang! In the arena, Lin soon defeated another opponent. This was already his 19th consecutive victory, and he won very calmly from the beginning until the end. Yes, calmly. Since the beginning of ascending the arena, he'd suppressed his strength and concentrated on tempering his martial arts, so he was very indifferent to victory and defeat. It couldn't be said to be exciting or attractive, and he merely sought to temper his martial arts. The 20th battle was about to begin. Lin soon rested at the side, and he was thinking in his heart about how many mid-grade congealing spirit jades the spiritual essence he'd earned these days could be exchanged for. Suddenly, Lin Sun seemed to feel something. He raised his head and looked at the other side of the arena, where a graceful figure and a silver-white mask came. She wore a black dress with a tall and slender body. Her waist was like silk and her shoulders were like knives. Her clear eyes were as quiet as the stars in the sky. She came to the arena, took out a cyan hairband, and tied her long black hair behind her head, revealing a white and slender gooseneck. Her movements were not fast, but there was a kind of free-hand rhythm and beauty, leisurely, pleasing to the eye. Is this my opponent in the 20th battle? Lin Sun's intuition was extremely keen. He immediately judged that this girl in a black dress with a cold temperament and quiet temperament should be a good opponent. This finally aroused a trace of interest in Lin Sun's heart. It was like meeting a bosom friend in wine or a rival in chess, which even made him look forward to it. These days, he hadn't met a worthy opponent, which was a pity in his heart. Now the appearance of this girl in a black dress would undoubtedly make a difference. I hope you won't let me down, Lin Sun murmured in his heart. When the girl in a black dress stepped onto the arena, her black hair was tied up, and her figure was aloof, with a kind of valiant and extraordinary posture. She also noticed Lin Sun. At first, she didn't take him seriously, but soon she felt that he was a very different guy. Even though the aura emanated from his entire body was ordinary, it was mellow and smooth, and it carried a feeling of returning to simplicity. It was otherworldly, and this could be considered to be rare amongst the younger generation. He could be called a genius figure. This made the girl in a black dress a little surprised. She just wanted to relieve the sulkiness in her heart and go to the arena to play. Unexpectedly, it seemed that she met a good opponent. I hope you will be very good. Chapter 800. Neither Lin Sun nor the girl in black dress knew that the opponent's thoughts were exactly the same as his. Before long, the battle began. However, to Lin Sun's surprise, the opponent was very confident and stood still as if waiting for Lin Sun to take the initiative to attack. He's really proud. Lin Sun laughed in his heart. At the same time, the girl in black dress also frowned. This guy seemed to be very fearless. Was he waiting for her to attack? But the point was he really sure that he could block her attack? He's really arrogant. The girl in black dress curled her lips with interest. It was the first time for her to meet such a character. When she fought before, all her opponents were extremely cautious, but none of them was as arrogant as the guy in front of her. Thus, a strange scene appeared on the arena. The bell for the battle had already rung, but the man and the woman were still standing in the same place, facing each other, not moving at all. Some of the practitioners who were paying attention to this side were all dissatisfied. What time was it, and he was still pretending to be mysterious. Young people nowadays were becoming more and more indecent. Brother Lin, beat her. Don't keep demeanor just because she is a woman. Xia Xiaochong shouted under the arena. My master said that this is not demeanor, but a slander to women's dignity. Real women don't need this kind of modesty. On the arena, Lin Sun was speechless. On the opposite side, the beautiful face of the girl in black dress covered by the silver mask also showed a touch of astonishment. Sister, come on. Brother Lin Sun can't wait for someone to defeat him. Xia Xiaochong shouted again, as if she wanted to see the world in chaos. Shut up. Lin Sun was a little flustered and exasperated. What did she mean by, I can't wait to be defeated? How could she talk like that? What if she misunderstood? The girl in black dress was annoyed in her heart. This little girl must be ironic, thinking that no one could defeat her, Brother Lin Sun. My friend, if you don't fight, don't blame me for being rude. The girl in black dress said coldly. Her voice was as clear as spring water, as sweet as the sound of nature, with a sense of lonely ice and snow. She was really speechless. She secretly decided that she must give this boy some pain later and see if he still dared to be arrogant. It's better that you're welcome. It wasn't easy for Lin Sun to meet a seemingly good opponent. Naturally, he was eager for the opponent to go all out. You, the girl in the black dress secretly ground her teeth and glared at Lin with her clear eyes. Very well, don't cry for mercy later. Then, her entire demeanor suddenly turned cold and frightening. An invisible force began to emit from her body. Feeling the change of the girl's breath, Lin Sun's eyes brightened. He was definitely a top-notch figure among his peers. This caused him to feel even more delighted and expectant, and he said with a smile, Cry and beg for mercy? You should keep those words to yourself. At the resting area in the distance, the expression of the old woman in azure became strange, and it carried a wisp of pity. That young man is really courageous. He actually dares to speak to the young miss in such a manner. The young woman's aura grew even colder while her clear eyes seethed with a terrifying glow. Obviously, she'd been infuriated. Don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She snorted coldly and took the initiative to attack. As she clapped her hands, the whole arena was shrouded in a misty and illusory mist. This arena is covered by the spiritual mist of concealment. Even if you want to admit defeat, you have to go through me first. The voice of the girl in the black dress was cold. Obviously, she had decided to teach Lin Sun a hard lesson. In order to prevent Lin Sun from admitting defeat halfway, she used this secret method. But the more it was like this, the happier Lin Sun was, and he said, It couldn't be better. I'm still worried about what if you run away in a panic. Although these words came from the heart, it was no different from a blatant provocation to the girl in the black dress. She didn't intend to hurt Lin Sun at first. After all, it was too ungracious for her to bully a strange young man with her identity. But now, she had put all these thoughts behind her, and the only thought in her mind was to beat the young man hard. Boom! Without hesitation, the girl in the black dress stepped out and waved her slender hand in the void. A touch of holy and fierce light emerged, which was as brilliant as a divine sword and shattered the void. A single blow aroused Lin Sun's fighting spirit. With a frightening luster bursting out of his eyes, he raised his hand and slapped out. The applause rumbled like thunder, like the shouting of gods and demons, accompanied by a lot of terrible light. There was a ripple in the heart of the girl in the black dress. As soon as she made a move, she knew that she had met an extremely strong opponent. It really surprised her that there was such a figure in the Tao Insight realm. Crack! With a graceful figure, she walked in the mist. With a gentle stroke of her finger, she easily resolved Lin Sun's attack and obliterated it in a brilliant glow. Lin Sun's black eyes were as deep as the abyss, and he was surprised. This woman was really an extremely rare and outstanding master. He didn't suppress and reserve his strength anymore. His whole body was roaring, and his whole body was covered with green divine light. He rushed forward with the ice dragon step. His change was amazing. A moment ago, he seemed calm and aloof, but now he was like a demon with a completely different momentum. Boom! The force of his fist shook the heaven and earth and disrupted the void. It carried an unparalleled power that could sweep through the world, and it was extremely powerful. The girl in the black dress was moved, and the annoyance in her heart disappeared. She realized that this opponent was far stronger than she had imagined. When did such a genius appear in the fire spirit state? Although the girl in the black dress thought quickly, her movements weren't slow. Her figure floated like a green lotus. Around her body, the shadows of spiritual swords were reflected. They seemed to be real and dazzling, and they were suffused with sharp sword intent that soared into the sky, causing the weather to change. Clatter, the spiritual swords fluttered in the void like a rain of light, and they seemed to be able to mince yin and yang and annihilate the 5 elements. The killing intent filled the whole area. Lin Sun's fist force was easily crushed, and it turned into turbulence and dispersed. The entire arena was shaking and trembling. Lin Sun was finally moved. Only a few breaths of time had passed since the battle began, yet the might and ability revealed by the girl in the black dress had shocked and surprised him many times, and it exceeded his expectations. She was absolutely the strongest person of the same generation that Lin Sun had encountered since he started cultivating, and she made him feel oppressive force that assaulted his face. After all, he'd already stepped foot onto the supreme path of the Tao Insight realm, and he was like a king that could look down upon all his opponents of the same cultivation realm. He could be said to be invincible amongst his peers. But now, a young girl in a black dress was able to go head-to-head with him. Did this mean that she'd already stepped foot onto the supreme path as well? Rumble! The battle erupted on the arena while divine radiance blazed. One was like a demon god while the other was like an immortal that was banished from the heavens, and a world-shocking battle erupted between the two of them. A rain of light fluttered while the sound of the Tao rumbled, and the void collapsed while numerous terrifying phenomena appeared. It could be said to be unparalleled. The arena was shaking. Even if the defensive formation was activated to the limit, it was only barely able to resist the impact of the aftershock of the battle. In the distant spectator area, countless cultivators were alarmed and looked over in unison. After that, all of them fell into great shock and were flabbergasted. It was too world-shocking. Such a battle caused the heavens and the earth to show signs of disorder, the wind and clouds dimmed, and the impetus shook the 9 heavens. Compared to this, the battles in the other areas of the arena instantly seemed inconspicuous, and they were like fireflies that were unable to compete with the brilliance of the sun and moon. Later on, all the battles on the arenas in the other areas of the Pine Mist martial arts arena stopped, and the cultivators that were fighting looked over in unison. The higher-ups of the Pine Mist martial arts arena were alarmed as well, and they showed themselves successively. This battle was too unparalleled and dazzling. A man and a woman competed for supremacy, and every single move they made emanated might that could incinerate mountains and boil seas. Their peerless bearing caused some of the older experts to feel ashamed of their inferiority and be shocked repeatedly. There was no doubt that this was absolutely an unprecedented battle at the peak, and it was too rare. A peerless battle like this had practically never occurred in Yen capital. At this moment, Lin Sun and the young girl in a black dress had become the center of attention, and the entire Pine Mist martial arts arena fell into an atmosphere of shock. No one could imagine why such an unparalleled battle would suddenly erupt today, nor did they know who the man and woman were or why they were so peerless and formidable. But everyone was clearly aware that no matter who won or lost this battle, it was bound to cause a stir in the world when it came to an end. In the spectator area, The green-clothed old woman had a solemn expression while a shocking glow shot out from her eyes, and she stared fixedly at the two parties that were fighting in the arena. At this moment, she didn't feel pity for Lin Sun any longer, and she even realized that her thoughts from before were wrong. She'd overestimated the young man. When did a little fellow that can fight the young miss appear in the Fire Spirit Province? Which clan is he from? The green-clothed old woman's mood rose and fell. Only she knew clearly how terrifying the impact of today's incident would be if it were to be spread out, and it would cause a mighty uproar in the entire West Sea region. Fortunately, the young miss' identity hasn't been exposed. No matter how great the impact is, it isn't to the extent of affecting the young miss. The green-clothed old woman took a deep breath and placed her attention onto Lin Sun. She had a strong feeling of curiosity. Who exactly is this kid? Xia Xiaochong was stunned like a stunned goose, and he muttered after quite some time. Will Big Brother Lin Sun lose this time? Bang! On the arena, Lin Sun was fighting, and every single move he made carried the bearing of a grandmaster. Even though he was a young man, he possessed the spirit to look down upon the world, and he was steady and overbearing like a king. The young girl in a black dress felt extremely great pressure, yet she didn't panic and dealt with it calmly. Only her clear eyes grew even more brilliant, and her entire body flowed with a mysterious and holy sheen, and she didn't hold back any longer. Chapter 801. Lin Sun felt very happy. Since he'd stepped foot onto the extreme Tao, it was the first time he'd encountered such a formidable person of the same generation, and it was even a young girl. He no longer kept a low profile and circulated all of his strength to fight head-on. The fighting spirit in his heart was like an erupting volcano. Boom! The might of his fist was large and carried the might to split mountains, split seas, and collapse the world. Moreover, it was accompanied by the roars of dragons and cries of phoenixes as it surged through the surroundings, and its impetus was world-shocking. This was the heaven-shaking Nine Strikes Tao. At this moment, Lin Sun was like an invincible king, standing at the top of the realm. Fighting in the top 10, he was brave and fierce, with a domineering spirit. The young woman's clear eyes flickered with a divine glow. Never had she imagined that there would actually be someone in the Fire Spirit Province who could proclaim himself as a king in the heavenly abode realm. That sort of peerless demeanor was truly unparalleled. Moreover, he was so young. It was truly too rare. Is that all you've got? If that's the case, I'll beat you up so badly that you won't be able to raise your head. The girl in the black dress snorted. She wanted to provoke Lin Sun on purpose to see his real limit and potential. At the same time, her slender and graceful body glowed, and a divine wheel appeared behind her head. It was like a small sacred world, and it was surrounded by dazzling divine halos. It was extremely astonishing. This was a type of terrifying inheritance secret method that had the power to suppress the world and refine all creatures. Within the divine wheel, there was a true dragon swimming in the void, a great phoenix dancing in the sky, a xuanwu suppressing the blue sea, and a vermilion bird burning the sky. Faintly, there was a mysterious chanting sound, ethereal and grand, as if all the saints were chanting sutras to enlighten the common people, making the world extremely holy. There was a vast and boundless aura all over the world, suppressing Lin Sun. So powerful! Lin Sun's heart trembled. He felt an incomparable oppressive force, which made him show signs of being bound and suppressed. However, he wasn't shocked but delighted instead. His battle intent grew even more exuberant, his blood boiled as if it was burning, and he possessed an imposing aura that could devour mountains and rivers and was confident that he was invincible. Boom! His black hair fluttered while his black eyes were brilliant like surging abysses, and the divine radiance around his body seemed even more ethereal and otherworldly. Mountain-splitting collapse, sea-splitting collapse, soul-shattering collapse, void refinement collapse, python-dragon collapse, great phoenix collapse, sky-devouring collapse, hell-suppressing collapse, myriad spirit collapse. The profundities of the Heavenshaker nine-strike Tao were easily grasped by him and released wantonly. For a time, this combat arena was completely filled with a terrifying energy of destruction, and it simply seemed as if the end of the world had arrived. It was not easy to meet such a powerful opponent. At this moment, Lin was completely immersed in the battle and forgot about the sky, the earth, and the people. In his eyes there was only battle. His mind was already filled with a boiling fighting spirit that was as hot as lava. Extraordinary! Is he invincible amongst his peers? Could it be that he's already touched the threshold of the absolute path towards the Tao and comprehended a trace of the true essence of kings? The young woman's clear eyes were like bolts of lightning, while she was extremely shocked in her heart. After all, since she'd started cultivating until now, it had already been a very long time since she'd fought like this. Amongst all the experts that had fought her in the past, there had never been anyone like this young man who was able to persist to such an extent and had never fallen into a disadvantageous position. This aroused a fighting spirit in the young woman in the black dress. The deadline of the great world battle was approaching gradually. It was undoubtedly a blessing to meet such an opponent before that. Her whole body was submerged in a holy aura, and she was as brilliant as a fairy from heaven. Her figure was graceful, and her skin was crystal clear and unstained. Boom! Before long, the defensive formation of this combat arena couldn't bear it any longer and burst into pieces. The terrifying aftermath spread out like a landslide and a tsunami. There was an exclamation and panic in the field. The practitioners in the field, who were shocked by this unparalleled battle, hurriedly covered their heads and fled far away. It was too scary. After all, the defensive formation on the combat arena could withstand the impact of a practitioner at the reincarnation developing realm. But now it was smashed into pieces. Didn't this mean that the strength of the battle between the man and the woman was enough to suppress a practitioner at the reincarnation developing realm? My God! Isn't this man and woman too ferocious? Many practitioners were dumbfounded. They were completely shocked to the point of losing their minds. Perhaps only the top peerless talents in the world can have such demeanor. Some older practitioners were trembling in their hearts. Even they were deeply amazed and shocked. Such an unparalleled battle could absolutely be said to be unprecedented, and it was too rare and extraordinary. Brother Lin beat her. Xia Xiaochong waved her pink little fist and shouted. She was very excited and her eyes were shining. Whoosh! In the field, the young woman in the black dress had already arrived above the clouds. Her clear eyes were like lightning as she looked down at Lin Sun. Do you dare to come up and have a good fight? Although the area in the martial arts field was large, it seemed to be a little restrictive for a strong practitioner at her level. Once she wantonly fought, it might cause unimaginable disasters. As you wish. Lin Sun laughed. He also had such an idea. His figure flashed, and he had already rushed up to the sky. Boom! Above the clouds, the divine light spread, blazing and dazzling. Accompanied by a terrible roar, it was like thunder shaking the ninth heaven with terrible momentum. The two of them fought fiercely again. In the pine mist martial arts field, all the practitioners were astounded. They looked up, yet they could only see some blurry signs of the battle. Because it was too dazzling and gorgeous, it was like a battle between gods, and they were unable to look at it directly. Some older practitioners didn't dare rashly look over even when they utilized the strength of their divine sense, because the murderous aura there shot into the sky, and the slightest mistake might affect them. At this moment, it wasn't just the pine mist martial arts field, even the other places in the city were alarmed. After all, the impetus of such a battle was too great. Now that it had moved to the sky, it was impossible for it not to draw the attention of others. What's that? My God! It wouldn't be that gods are fighting, right? On the bustling streets of Yen capital, the various living beings and practitioners that came and went were shocked at the first possible moment, and they gave rise to an uproar. The scene was too terrifying. In the sky, the clouds collapsed, divine radiance poured down, and terrifying sounds of collision were like thunderclaps that shook the heavens and the earth. Faintly, the roars of dragons and tigers and the furious roars of gods and demons reverberated, and it caused one's heart to tremble and feel extremely oppressed. This was like a battle between the gods in the heavens, vast and boundless. Quickly, a peerless battle that shakes the heavens and the earth is occurring in the pine mist martial arts field. It can't be missed. It's over there. As the most bustling and grand ancient city in the Firesoul Prefecture, Yen capital occupied an extremely vast area. But when this battle erupted in the sky, it still drew the attention of the cultivators from the various other areas. If one were to look down from the sky, one would notice that at this moment there were countless dense figures approaching the area where the Pine Mist martial arts field resided from all directions, and it was an extremely magnificent scene. "Hey, why aren't you fighting anymore?" At the Yen capital martial arts field, a cultivator had mustered up the courage to ascend the combat ring, yet he noticed that Fong Linhan had actually flashed off the combat ring, and Fong Linhan had simply disregarded his existence, causing this cultivator to be extremely ashamed and resentful. "Haha, you're still not convinced?" Fong Linhan laughed light-heartedly as he swung his palm out, and the cultivators in the combat ring didn't even have the chance to react before they were swatted flying like flies. "Damn it! Why can't I encounter an opponent that's worthy of a battle?" Fong Linhan's eyes looked towards the extremely distant sky, and a world-shocking battle was being carried out there. Besides causing him to be surprised, he couldn't help but be extremely envious. Even if he were to fight one of such experts, then this trip would be worth it. Swoosh! He didn't hesitate to charge towards the area where the Pine Mist martial arts field resided. He was extremely curious about exactly who were the two parties in battle. Right, should I go notify Brother Lin at the inn and go watch the show together? On the way, Fong Linhan suddenly thought of something. A battle like this was absolutely unparalleled in the world, and if nothing unexpected happened, it ought to be a battle between two peerless figures. It would be too much of a pity if he were to miss it. With that fellow's ability, he'd probably been alarmed and rushed over a long time ago. There's utterly no need for me to make an unnecessary move. Fong Linhan recalled the incident of Lin Sun killing the two black-clothed figures that night, and he instantly shook his head before flashing towards the distance. Pine Mist martial arts field. Mo Feng's entire body trembled as he clenched his fists tightly, and his eyes stared fixedly at the sky. He could faintly see a youth that was like a demon god, disdainful and domineering, and he revealed boundlessly terrifying divine might. However, Mo Feng's heart was filled with terror and bewilderment. "So he's even more formidable than I imagined. I'm afraid even you jamming wouldn't be more than this." Did Master realize how terrifying this kid is, and that's why she returned to the sect to ask for help to deal with him? There was an indescribable feeling in Mo Feng's heart. Was it really the right choice to become enemies with such an opponent? He didn't know. Whoosh! Suddenly, the old woman in azure made a move. She withdrew a jade scepter, and a myriad of light rain drifted down from it. The light rain revolved as it charged into the sky, and it transformed into a screen of light that covered the sky. Instantly, the sky stopped shaking, and the aftershock of the battle seemed to have been dissolved by a shapeless force. Seeing this, the old woman in azure heaved a sigh of relief. The battle was too intense, and if the aftershock of the battle continued to spread, the entire area would be destroyed. This was Yen capital, a densely populated place. Once such a thing happened, it would inevitably cause unimaginable casualties. "Miss, you've finally met an opponent this time. I wonder how long this young man can persist in the end." The old woman in azure seemed very calm. She was very clear about the strength of the girl in the black dress, and that was why she had absolute confidence. In the sky, Lin Sun's momentum was getting stronger, and his every movement was full of the demeanor of a young king. His combat power soared, and his chi and blood surged like the sea, becoming more and more powerful. His cultivation had been stagnant at the Tao Insight realm for too long. The reason why he had been constantly honing his martial arts these days was that he wanted to make up for his shortcomings as soon as possible, so that he could reach the peak of the reincarnation development realm. The battle with the girl in black dress at this moment was undoubtedly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him to hone his martial arts, and he didn't want to miss it easily. At the same time, the girl in black dress also keenly felt the change in Lin Sun's combat power, which inevitably caused ripples in her heart, and she couldn't calm down. Chapter 802. Boom. Lin Sun was attacking in a domineering manner. He used the Ice Drake steps, and his entire body shone. At this moment, he was truly like a fiend god, and every move he made was terrifying to the extreme. This was a type of disdainful aura. His battle intent blazed, and he felt that he was the only one who reigned supreme. He wanted to crush and suppress all enemies. The girl in the black dress's peerless face was covered by the silver mask, but the surprise on her face could not be hidden. The Westung world was extremely large, and it encompassed a few thousands of states, causing it to be extremely vast. There were numerous ancient sects standing towering there, and there were numerous dazzling geniuses that were renowned in an area. Ever since the girl in the black dress started cultivating, she had seen all sorts of geniuses. She had also fought with some truly talented people. But it was the first time that she had met such a powerful person in the Tao Insight realm, and he was so young. Judging from his age, he was even several years younger than her. This surprised the young woman in the black dress. She didn't expect that she would encounter such a true dragon in the fire spirit state by accident. Little girl, if you only have this much strength, then you'll be begging for mercy today. On the opposite side, Lin Sun burst into laughter, looking very arrogant. The young woman in a black dress gritted her teeth in secret while her clear eyes emanated a sharp glow that was like sword insight. She swung her hand and struck out a string of pure and holy symbols that were dense like tidewater, and they were like a group of obscure sword insight that shattered space and slaughtered yin and yang. Do you really think I can't suppress you? Her slender and graceful body became even more holy, and her fine black hair was coiled with a sparkling and translucent luster. Her imposing manner was vast and extraordinary. Rumble! The two of them collided and erupted with expanses of divine light. The force of the fist and sword insight shot out like flames, and they poured down into the 9 heavens, causing this place to be covered in a brilliant expanse. They fought fiercely. For a moment it was like a divine dragon was in confrontation with a phoenix, and for a moment it was like a devil god was in battle with a celestial maiden. Both of them revealed terrifying abilities that far surpassed those at the same cultivation realm in the world. The girl's clothes fluttered in the wind, and her sparkling body shone like an ethereal fairy. She fought fiercely with Lin Sun. No matter how strong Lin Sun became, she never fell into a disadvantageous position. However, there was a trace of anger in her heart. This was the first time in her life that she had been confronted to such a state. She was unable to gain the upper hand, and it seemed extremely difficult for her. Around her, the void continued to collapse and spread. That was the power of her body that was constantly growing stronger, constantly resisting and defusing the strong attacks from Lin Sun. Boom! Suddenly, the figure of the girl in the black dress flashed, and her white hand turned into a sword. She drew an obscure and mysterious sword mark and collided with Lin's fist, bursting out horrible and dazzling light, filling the void with holy and fierce spirit. Thud, thud, thud. Lin Sun's figure was blasted back, and he was slightly surprised. After that, his black pupils were like bolts of lightning that emanated divine radiance as he attacked once more. This time, it was even more ferocious than before. Every single step he took caused the snow-white chi to howl and soar into the sky, causing the heavens and the earth to rumble and shake, and it was formidable to the extreme. The eyes of the young woman in a black dress focused as she sensed a terrifying pressure. She didn't dare hesitate to wave her fair hand as if she was forming the seal of a vase, and then a wisp of brilliant and pure white sword insight appeared abruptly and revealed a peerlessly fierce aura of slaughter. At this instant, the void wailed and the heavens and the earth were filled with a terrifying aura. The cultivators who were watching the battle on the ground trembled as if they had fallen into a cold pit, and their hairs stood on end. That wisp of holy sword insight was too terrifying. It was only 3 inches long, but it gushed out a peerless sharpness as if it could run through time and kill all living beings. Miss is forced to use the 3-life sword seal. The old woman in cyan was completely shocked, and her eyes were full of terrifying divine light. The 3-life sword seal was a peerless secret technique that could cut off the karma of the previous life, the present life, and the future life. All the mysteries were condensed into one seal, and once it was exerted, it had the power to reverse the universe. This was the real unique technique passed down by the ancient sages. Lin Sun was horrified, and a strong sense of crisis surged in his heart. His pupils shrank as he realized the terror of this blow. However, at this moment, he didn't retreat, but advanced instead. With a long roar, his spirit chi and spirit instantly reached an unprecedented peak state, and his whole body showed a sense of extreme perfection. Boom! He punched out. Vaguely, the fist strength seemed to run through time and space, with a kind of epic, grand, and destructive aura, which seemed to be able to shake the barrier of the sky and break open the illusory door. It was amazing. All the practitioners in the field had an illusion of suffocation and collapse, as if they saw a devil punching the sky to break all the shackles. He understood. At the moment when he punched out, Lin Sun's mind was unprecedentedly calm and clear. All kinds of mysteries of the 9 strikes of shaking heaven emerged in his mind, and finally these mysteries were condensed into one and turned into a punch in his hand. This was the fist of shaking heaven. In a trance, all the practitioners who paid attention to this battle seemed to see a magnificent figure suddenly appear in the sky, standing on the top of the clouds. His body, which seemed to be made of copper and iron, was surging with terrible and tyrannical aura. He was like a god from the legends. He leaped up and smashed his fist into the sky. Boom! An earth-shaking collision sounded. The 3-life sword seal and the fist of shaking heaven collided. The sky seemed to be about to be broken, with countless shocking cracks spreading in all directions like a spider web. The sky seemed to be collapsing, shaking and roaring, and was about to fall. Just the sound wave was enough to make the spectators' heads buzz. They saw stars and almost coughed up blood in discomfort. Some weaker people directly squatted on the ground, sweating profusely. The light curtain derived from the jade ruby sacrificed by the old woman in cyan blocked the sound waves. Otherwise, the aftermath of the battle would definitely cause unimaginable disasters. The collision this time was truly too world-shocking. The sky was like a mirror that was shattered into pieces, and it was a horrifying sight. In the sky, the figure of the girl in the black dress stepped back a few steps. Her long black hair was a little messy. Because her face was covered by the mask, her expression could not be seen clearly. But it could be seen from the light bursting out of her clear eyes that she was shocked. At the same time, although Lin Sun did not step back, his figure shook several times. A flush appeared on his handsome face, but it disappeared in an instant. Although he was surprised by the horror of the girl in the black dress, he was more happy. The 9 strikes of shaking heaven, the secret method inherited from the ancient seal of shaking heaven, was finally fully understood and mastered by him. The power was too strong. This secret technique had a total of 9 moves, and every single move contained its own profundity. When it was attained to a state of perfection, then the profundities of these 9 moves could be overlapped together and fused into a single punch, allowing it to develop boundless profundities and exert unimaginably terrifying might. Although it was only a single punch, when one completely grasped it, One would be able to display its full might with a wave of one's hand, and one wouldn't have to rigidly adhere to a single move. Lin Sun was very sure that even a strong practitioner of reincarnation developing realm could not resist this punch at all. But the girl in the black dress blocked it, which made Lin Sun more and more aware that this girl was too extraordinary. She must be a peerless person with an amazing origin. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made a breakthrough in martial arts in such a short time. Lin Sun smiled very brightly. The girl in the black dress was stunned, and a terrible luster surged in her clear eyes. She gritted her teeth and said, "Have you always regarded me as a sparring partner?" Lin Sun was stunned. Isn't the purpose of sparring to hone oneself? The girl in the black dress didn't show any reaction on the surface. She looked very cold and calm, but she was so angry that she almost coughed up blood. Such a serious and solemn duel was described as a sparring match by him. It was so hateful. "Oh, do you want to continue playing?" The girl in the black dress was very angry. She still had a trump card that she hadn't used before. She had some scruples before, but now she didn't care so much. She just wanted to beat this hateful guy. "Forget it. I made too much noise today. I don't want to be regarded as a monster. If you want to play, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future," Lin Sun said casually. He had no quarrel with the girl in the black dress, and after this battle, he realized that the girl in the black dress should not be inferior to him at all, which made Lin Sun even feel that he was a talent. But the girl in the black dress didn't agree and said coldly, "I said, even if you want to admit defeat today, you have to get my permission. You must be worried that your identity will be exposed by wearing a mask, right? Now many people in Yen capital are watching here. If you continue to fight, you will inevitably expose more clues, and people will definitely guess your identity. Do you think it's worth it?" Lin Sun said with a smile. The girl in the black dress was stunned. She restrained her anger and became quiet and cold. Lin Sun's words did speak her mind. She was even very sure that once her identity was exposed, those old guys in the sect would definitely kill her at the first time and invite her back. "You see, it's not appropriate to continue fighting now. It's better to end it like this. Bye." Lin Sun smiled and turned to leave. This made the girl in the black dress hate Lin Sun's look. It was so hateful. "Want to leave? Stay here." The more she thought about it, the more unwilling she became. Staring at Lin Sun's back for a while, she finally gritted her teeth and grabbed Lin Sun's shoulder like a flash of lightning. "What?" Lin Sun was stunned. He didn't expect that the girl in the black dress would continue to fight. When he intended to turn around and counterattack, he'd already lost the initiative. However, Lin Sun wasn't someone to be trifled with. At such a moment, driven by his combat instincts, his back arched like a dragon, and divine radiance surged as he executed the move Ram Down. The girl in the black dress realized the danger. She suddenly turned around and wanted to change her movement to continue to capture Lin Sun. However, even though her reaction was fast, she didn't realize that the negative but strike would be so swift and strange. It was actually a type of secret technique that attacked from the back. Caught off guard, the instant she turned around, she felt her plump buttocks that were like a full moon fiercely collide with a strong force. In an instant, the girl in the black dress seemed to be struck by lightning. Her mind went blank, and her beautiful face under the silver mask stiffened. This blow made the bastard hit her buttocks. Chapter 803. The girl in the black dress was so ashamed and angry that she even wanted to kill him. In the past, she was respected as a fairy. She had a high status in the Westing world, and no one dared to blaspheme or offend her. But now, she was hit by Lin Sun's back in the most embarrassing part of her body, which almost made her unable to believe it. The most embarrassing thing was that the force of this collision was extremely great, and it struck her plump, but that was like a full moon, causing her entire body to be blasted flying. Her posture seemed to be in an extremely sorry state. That place was burning hot, and she felt as if it was going to shatter. However, compared to this pain, the black-dressed young woman felt even more humiliated and furious. Even her snow-white and exquisite skin was red, and her face that could be said to be peerless was filled with humiliation and anger. This was simply unimaginable, and she was unable to accept it. How dare this damn bastard be so shameless? Even if the girl in the black dress had a high temperament, she was furious at this moment. At the same time, Lin Sun also had a trace of doubt in his heart. With his keen perception, he instantly noticed that something was wrong. Just now it felt like it was very soft and elastic. Could it be? Lin Sun's heart thumped and he realized that something was wrong. He didn't need to turn his head to know that there was a pair of clear eyes staring at him coldly like a knife at the moment. The terrible killing intent made him feel scared in his heart. Damn it! Lin Sun realized that this blow was destined to be a misunderstanding, but he couldn't explain it at all. Whoosh! Almost subconsciously, Lin Sun ran ice drake steps and disappeared in the void, as if the soles of his feet were smeared with oil. He was a little guilty and decisively retreated first. His speed was so fast that all the practitioners in the field were stunned. Ah! Above the void, the girl in the black dress became more and more ashamed and angry. She couldn't control her anger and killing intent and let out a clear roar. Boom! Her cyan hairband broke, and her long black hair flew in the air. Her slender and graceful figure released earth-shaking killing intent, sweeping in all directions. Her clear eyes were full of killing intent. That bastard was so hateful. After humiliating her, he still dared to escape. He didn't take her seriously at all. At this moment, she was like an ancient volcano erupting. The terrible momentum made all the practitioners on the ground shocked and anxious. It was too scary. She was like a fairy that was furious, and the consequences were unimaginable. You can't touch a tiger's butt, let alone a tigress. Brother Lin is courting death. Xia Xiaocheng's innocent face was full of amazement. She even admired Lin Sun's courage. He was not afraid of death at all. That guy looks familiar. Why does he look like Brother Lin? Fang Linhan finally arrived, but he missed the fierce competition. He only saw Lin Sun's figure scurrying like a rat, and because his speed was too fast, he didn't dare to confirm the identity of that person. Hey, something's not right. Why does this chick in black dress look so familiar? She looks like, when he saw the enraged figure in the sky, Fang Linhan was stunned once more, and then he decisively shook his head. It can't be her. According to the rumors, she's a woman that's like a banished immortal, otherworldly. How could she possibly erupt with such a terrifying rage like this woman? Her personality is too different, unfortunately. Before Fang Linhan could confirm it further, the young woman in black dress in the sky was taken away by a green-clothed old woman, and she transformed into a ray of light that vanished in an instant. This caused Fang Linhan to be shocked in his heart, and he noticed how terrifying the green-clothed old woman was. Even if she wasn't a true king, she wasn't far from it. What a pity! I actually missed such an unparalleled battle. Fang Linhan sighed in his heart, and he was extremely unwilling. He yearned for an opponent that could fight him, but he hadn't encountered one until now, so he couldn't help but feel depressed in his heart. This unparalleled battle that erupted abruptly and ended abruptly came to an end under the dumbstruck gazes of everyone. But in next to no time, the news of this battle swept through the entire flame capital like a hurricane, and it caused everyone to have no choice but to wonder if it wouldn't be long before the news of this battle would spread throughout the thousands of cities in the entire fire spirit state. After all, this battle was truly too shocking and shocking. A domineering and arrogant young man that was like a fiend god, and a pure and graceful young woman in a black dress that was like a celestial maiden from the heavens. Both of them could be said to be peerless geniuses, yet they'd fought in the sky above Flame Capital and received the attention of everyone, so the effect of this battle was obvious. This battle could even be said to be unprecedented. After all, such a world-shocking battle had never occurred in Flame Capital in the past. This is the bearing of a peerless genius. The strength they possess has long since surpassed their peers, and they've arrived at a height that cultivators of the same cultivation realm are unable to reach. Many people sighed with emotion. Presently, everyone in the world was clearly aware that an unprecedented great battle was about to arrive. There was no doubt that this was bound to be a stage that belonged to the true geniuses. At that time, all the geniuses in the world would rise together, and all the heroes would fight for supremacy. Ordinary cultivators were bound to have no chance of participating in it. Perhaps only outstanding figures like this pair of man and woman will possess the qualifications to compete for the fortune of the world after the great battle arrives, right? Some practitioners of the older generation also sighed with emotion. Today's battle had deeply touched them. It's so rare. This battle is destined to cause a sensation in the entire West Hung world. But who on earth are that man and woman, and which force do they come from? Most practitioners were guessing the identity of Lin Sun and the young woman in a black dress, but unfortunately, Lin Sun's face was too strange to be recognized. The young woman in a black dress wore a silver mask that covered most of her face, so it was also impossible to recognize her. On the contrary, this made them more mysterious in the hearts of practitioners. It could be expected that when the rumor of today's battle spread and was known by the entire West Hung world, the identity of this pair of man and woman might be recognized, and then the answer would be revealed. At night, Flame Capital was as bustling and noisy as before. But different from before, many girls on the street wore a silver mask that was as white as snow, looking mysterious. Even some men wore such a mask. In every corner of the street, there were peddlers from cyan flower demonic tribes selling illusory viridescent flower. This was a strange flower, which was the size of a palm, with 6 petals and a verdant color. As long as it was covered on the face, it could be transformed into different masks at will. In today's unprecedented battle, the mask that the young woman in a black dress wore was condensed by illusory viridescent flower. However, perhaps because her performance today was too dazzling, although people couldn't know her identity, the mask she wore suddenly became popular. Some young boys and girls who admired the young woman in a black dress very much even had one each. It seemed that they were proud to wear such a mask, which set off a new trend in Flame Capital. This was the influence of the worship of the strong. Cyan Flower Demonic Tribe, which was rich in illusory viridescent flower, undoubtedly became the biggest winner, taking advantage of this opportunity to make a lot of money. In the past, a illusory viridescent flower could be bought with only 3 pieces of low-grade spiritual essence, but its value had doubled overnight to a sky-high price of 30 pieces of low-grade spiritual essence. Profiteers! On the street, Lin Sun muttered. At this moment, he was also wearing a silver-white mask of the same style. If you're not willing, take it off and give it to me. As Xia Xiaochong spoke, she stretched out her claws and reached towards Lin Sun's face. Her pure little face was also wearing a mask, but it was pure black, which was the opposite of the silver-white mask. Stop fooling around. Lin Sun reached out and slapped away Xia Xiaochong's claws. Then, he glanced around guiltily and said in a low voice, "Do you think I want to wear it? Isn't it because I'm afraid of being seen through? Ha, look at how sneaky you are." Xia Xiaochong laughed, taking pleasure in Lin Sun's misfortune. "If you didn't hit my butt today, how could you be so guilty and afraid of being recognized?" Lin Sun's face darkened. "Xiaochong, this matter concerns our safety. You promised me that you wouldn't tell anyone about this." "Don't worry, I definitely won't. I, Xia Xiaochong, am a man of my word," Xia Xiaochong said absent-mindedly. But Lin Sun was still a little worried and solemnly warned. "Also, when you go back to the inn and see that Fong Linhan, you must not be love-struck again, lest you accidentally spill the beans." Xia Xiaochong was stunned. She seemed to recall Fong Linhan's evil and arrogant face in her mind, and her eyes suddenly became absent-minded. Lin Sun's forehead was full of black lines. What he said came true. This damned girl was simply hopeless for being love-struck. He secretly decided that if Xia Xiaocheng's master still didn't appear tomorrow, he would leave immediately. Now, he had completely understood and mastered all the mysteries of the 9 strikes of shaking heaven, and only the inheritance and cultivation of the last 2 changes of the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon were left. And if he wanted to comprehend the 8th change, the Eye of the Mocking Wind, he needed to go deep into the wilderness to observe the general situation of the mountains and rivers, so as to deduce and comprehend the mysteries of this secret technique. As for the 9th change, he needed to master the mystery of the 8th change, the Eye of the Mocking Wind, before he could comprehend and cultivate it. In addition, there was also the state of enlightenment that needed to be solved. But Lin Sun was not worried about this. He had reached the consummation of the Tao of Water, and he needed an opportunity to carry out transformation and make the Tao of Water reach the level of Tao of Water. For example, the power of Tao could only show its real power when it was mastered to the level of Tao. Why were some top practitioners of reincarnation developing realms so powerful? One of the most important reasons was that they had begun to use the gist of Tao to fight. Of course, ordinary practitioners of reincarnation developing realm were similar to Lin Sun. They were stuck at the level of Tao and could not break through. The reason was simple. This was the reason of aptitude and comprehension. If the aptitude and comprehension were ordinary, they might even stop here for the rest of their lives. Brother Lin, you're finally back. Did you watch today's battle? As soon as he returned to the inn, he saw that Fong Linhan had been waiting there for a long time. When he saw Lin Sun, he immediately got up and asked. Lin Sun glanced at Xia Xiaocheng next to him with some worry, for fear that she would be love-struck and accidentally tell everything. Unexpectedly, Xia Xiaocheng opened her eyes wide at this moment, looked at the table in the side area of the inn, and cried in surprise, "Master!" Chapter 804. Master? Lin Sun was stunned and couldn't help looking up. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and was stunned. It was a woman who could bring disaster to a country and people. Her black hair was like a waterfall, her pretty face was charming, and her eyebrows were as black as ink. Her phoenix eyes were full of charm, which gave people a feeling of electric shock. She was dressed very casually. Her clothes were simple, but her body was graceful and plump. Her skin was crystal clear like fine jade, shining with a clear luster. Even though she was quiet and elegant when she sat upright, there was a unique and alluring charm to her every movement. What was a peerless stunner? That was it. She was as beautiful as a source of calamity and peerless, which reminded people unconsciously of a saying that there was a beautiful woman in the world who was independent of the world. Her first glance could bring down a city, and her second glance could bring down a country. Even though Lin Sun had seen many beautiful women in his cultivation, and each woman had her own charm and beauty, he was still amazed at the moment. But at this moment, he could not help but be stunned. He had never imagined that Xia Xiaocheng's master would be such a peerlessly beautiful woman. Moreover, Lin Sun noticed that the atmosphere in the inn was very strange. The eyes of the nearby diners were all gathered on the charming and delicate woman. They all looked obsessed with her, and from time to time, there was a sound of swallowing saliva. The woman looked calm. She raised her cup and sipped tea. Her ruddy and plump lips touched the light cyan-smooth porcelain cup. She pursed her lips slightly, and her teeth were slightly exposed. The picture was indescribably amazing and attractive. It seemed that any ordinary action, when used on this woman, had a special charm and style. Lin Sun couldn't imagine that such a pure and simple Xia Xiaocheng's master was such a beauty who could bring disaster to a country and people. The difference was too big. Fong Linhan, who was talking with Lin Sun, also smiled at the moment and threw an ambiguous look at Lin Sun, saying, "Are you amazed?" Lin Sun nodded in agreement. "Look at me." Fong Linhan originally wanted to talk with Lin Sun, but he suddenly changed his mind at the moment. He straightened his clothes and strode to the woman's table. He wasn't polite at all. He casually sat on the side and revealed a charming smile on his devilishly handsome face. In a low voice, he said, "Isn't it too boring to drink tea alone? Why don't I accompany you for a drink?" His eyes were very sincere, without any obscenity. He was bold and calm with an elegant demeanor. Coupled with his evil and charming face, he really had a proud capital that made it difficult for any woman to refuse. Lin Sun was stunned and admired him in his heart. At least for the first time, he found that this arrogant and unruly guy was so shameless. Xia Xiaochong was also stunned for a moment. She found it hard to believe. She had always been infatuated with Fong Linhan's looks, but now, this guy actually had designs on her master. This made her very angry. Her pure little face was full of anger. She muttered angrily in her heart, Fong Linhan, I didn't expect you to be such a person." Xia Xiaochong's master put down the teacup, and her rosy lips evoked a mocking arc. She squinted at Fong Linhan with a pair of phoenix eyes and said, "Young man, in terms of age, I am more than enough to be your mother. In terms of appearance, I have seen a lot of pretty boys like you. In terms of strength, you seem to be just so. But you have the courage to seduce me. You are really bold and ignorant." Her voice, with a hint of hoarseness, was low and lazy. It was obviously a mocking and warning, but it had a kind of enchanting charm. Lin Sun was secretly sweating. Xia Xiaochong's master was really direct. If it was someone else, he would have already been ashamed and defeated. But it just so happened that Fong Linhan was unmoved. His smile was still dazzling and enchanting as he looked at the woman with a sincere gaze and said seriously, "Nothing? No, I also have a unique love for beauty. There are great beauties in the world without words. In my eyes, you are the most brilliant beauty in the world." In the end, his voice became more and more low and serious with a sense of piety. "What's more, I love your beauty in my heart. How can I pretend to be empty?" "That works?" Lin Sun's eyes widened. "Isn't it too shameless?" "Bah! What a shameless man! I didn't expect you to be such a person." Some diners nearby secretly despised him, but in fact, they were very envious that Fong Linhan could talk with the woman so openly and generously. Some of the self-proclaimed experienced cultivators had their horizons broadened and were completely convinced by Fong Linhan's methods. What was a love saint-level expert? This was it. No matter how mushy and hypocritical the words were, he could say them in a sincere and calm tone, but it was not delicate and pretentious, which was amazing. But the woman smiled slightly, and a curve appeared on her bright red lips. She said, "Oh really? I can't see your heart. Do you want to dig it out and let me have a look?" Her pair of watery red phoenix eyes were also serious. She didn't seem to be joking. There was a sense of disdain in her meaning. It seemed to say that she had seen this kind of tricks many times. The little girl was good, but in front of her, she was really not good enough. But this didn't hit Fong Linhan at all. This guy smiled freely and said, "Girl, this is the voice of my heart. If you want, I can stay by your side and let you listen to it for a lifetime. If I dig out my heart, it will spoil the scenery." "You don't dare?" The woman was very direct. Fong Linhan's face didn't change. He smiled calmly and said, "I don't dare." Everyone immediately despised and was disappointed. No matter how shameless this guy was, he still gave up in the end. The woman also smiled. "Little guy, your cultivation is too shallow. You are really too tender to hook up with me. Go back and cultivate well." But Fong Linhan sighed and said, "Girl, you misunderstand. The reason why I don't dare is because once I do so, how can I love you again? When I think that my heart doesn't exist and I lack the instinct to love you, even if I am alive, what is the difference between me and a walking corpse?" In the end, he sighed again and murmured, "How can there be a perfect method in the world? Not letting down Buddha and not letting down you? His words were sincere, and he looked like a passionate person who was deeply in love. At this moment, even Lin Sun was in awe. Regardless of this guy's strength, just this skill of shamelessness alone made him admit defeat and feel ashamed of his inferiority. Fang Linhan, you are shameless. Xia Xiaochong couldn't bear it anymore and shouted angrily. Then he turned and walked to the room on the second floor angrily. His words immediately destroyed the ambiguous atmosphere that had been created, making Fang Linhan slightly stagnate and a little unprepared. He quickly picked up a cup of tea and gulped it down to cover up the embarrassment. Lin Sun almost laughed out loud. Xia Xiaochong deserved to be called Xia Xiaochong. His words were simple and crude, directly hitting the key point. No matter what tricks and means you used, I will break them with one word. He had a fierce posture of, one man can defeat 10 men. Look, you can't even resist my disciple, and you still want to hook up with me? Young man, you are a little bit too ambitious. The woman smiled slightly and got up leisurely. Her graceful figure was full of charm, and she followed Xia Xiaochong's footsteps. Just halfway, she looked back at Lin Sun, her starry eyes sparkling, bright and beautiful, and said softly, I have kept you waiting for so many days. You must be anxious. I will wait for you in the room. After that, she turned around and left. It was obviously a very common thing, but when it was said by her red lips, it carried a touch of heart-stirring flavor and made people's imagination run wild. Lin Sun was in a trance and keenly noticed that the expressions of all the practitioners nearby became ambiguous. They looked at him with surprise, envy and jealousy in their eyes. Fang Linhan, on the other hand, looked at Lin Sun seriously for a long time. Then he sighed and said sincerely, Brother Lin, I showed my incompetence just now and let you see a joke. I didn't expect that you are the most hidden veteran in love. I'm really ashamed and admire you. I'm too ashamed to show my face. Lin Sun's lips twitched imperceptibly. Obviously, this bastard thought too much and misunderstood him. However, before Lin Sun could explain, Fang Linhan patted him on the shoulder and sighed with emotion. No need to explain. I understand. When a flower blooms, it should be plucked. Go, don't let the beauty wait too long and waste this good time. Looking at his lonely appearance, Lin Sun suddenly had a strong impulse to beat him. What was he thinking? He took a deep breath, decided to ignore this bastard, and turned away. Fang Linhan stood there in a daze and sighed with emotion, not observing life and death and impermanence. Too much love will damage the cultivation. Extremely smart and wise, I sigh that I am always at a loss here. Lin Sun staggered and almost fell down. He resisted the impulse to turn back, fearing that once he turned back, he couldn't help but kill this pretentious bastard. When Lin Sun's back disappeared in the room, a practitioner in the inn suddenly stood up, clapped his hands and exclaimed, Today I know what a Casanova is. Without making a sound, he has already brought the beauty home and left with a brush of his clothes. His achievements and fame are just like the spring breeze sneaking into the night, moistening things silently. Immediately, all the practitioners present agreed with him. It was hard not to admire a peerless beauty who could bring disaster to a country and people to be invited into the room by a young man without saying anything. In contrast, Fang Linhan's provocative actions just now seemed deliberate and artificial. The traces of chisel were too heavy, which made him inferior. What was a Casanova? That was it. As soon as Lin Sun entered the room, he saw the woman sitting lazily at the table with a snow-white lotus arm supporting her face. She looked at him up and down with her bright and charming phoenix eyes. She said thoughtfully, Let me guess, young man, I'm afraid that you are still a greenhorn in the field of love. You have never really fallen in love or loved anyone. Lin Sun was exposed in one sentence. If those practitioners in the hall of the inn heard this, they would burst into tears. How could the Casanova, who was admired by them, be a greenhorn? This caused their worldview to collapse. Lin Sun was also embarrassed. He was misunderstood by Fong Linhan before and wanted to kill him impulsively. Now this woman exposed his secret in front of him. He couldn't hold his face and wanted to slam the door and leave. It was really a femme fatale that could bring disaster to a country and people. Because of this woman, Fong Linhan seemed to have changed into a different person. He was neurotic, and because of this woman, Lin Sun was at a loss. Chapter 805. The smile on the woman's lips disappeared. She didn't continue to embarrass Lin Sun and said, "Young man, come and sit down. I don't have much time. Let's have a good talk." As soon as she finished speaking, the aura around her body suddenly changed. Just a moment ago, she was like a peerless beauty whose beauty could cause the downfall of nations. She was amorous and enchanting. But now, he was filled with a pure and holy aura. His appearance was calm and dignified, and he had an ethereal bearing of seeing through the mortal world and standing above the mortal world. This shocked Lin Sun, who realized that Xia Xiaocheng's master must be an extremely powerful figure. Lin Sun didn't stand on ceremony. He sat on one side at random. Inadvertently, he found that Xia Xiaocheng had already fallen asleep on the bed. "My name is Lin Wenjun, and I come from the Green Mountains Holy Fox. I was delayed by something before, so I met you at this moment." Lin Wenjun introduced herself and said, "I heard from Xiaocheng that you are going to Dongxing Boundary?" Lin Sun nodded. To go to Dongxing Boundary, you need to cross the barrier of a world. Only saints who master the law of space can freely travel through it. Lin Wenjun said slowly in a calm tone, "There are only two ways for ordinary practitioners to go to Dongxing Boundary. One is to travel by yourself in the broken world path between the world barriers. However, the world path is the most dangerous and turbulent. Even saints will encounter many dangers in it. It's a narrow escape." Lin Sun nodded. He had inquired about it these days. The so-called world passage was the passage between worlds. It was extremely dangerous and full of unpredictable natural disasters and disasters. Generally speaking, except for desperados, no one would choose to cross a world in this way. The second way is to safely arrive at Dongxing Boundary from West Heng Boundary with the help of the transmission ancient formation. Lin Wenjun continued, "However, ordinary practitioners are not qualified to use the transmission ancient formation at all. After all, such an ancient formation is arranged by saint. It costs a lot of top-grade spiritual marrow to run once. It isn't just that. There are only a little over 10 teleportation formations like this that head to the East Victory region in the entire Great West world. Moreover, most of them are controlled by those ancient sects, so it isn't something that just anyone can borrow." Knowing this, Lin Sun frowned at once. Sure enough, going to Dongxing territory was not as simple as he thought. To put it simply, if one wishes to borrow the teleportation formation, then firstly, one must obtain the agreement of an ancient orthodoxy. Secondly, one must pay a considerable fee. Speaking of this, Lin Wenjun gazed at Lin Sun with a pair of phoenix eyes and said, "Now you should know that paying the fee is just a trivial matter. The real problem is actually to get the approval of an ancient orthodoxy." Lin Sun nodded. He finally understood. Immediately, an idea came to his mind and he said, "I wonder if you can point out a way for me?" In his opinion, since Xia Xiaocheng's master had made him wait for so many days, it was unlikely that he was just going to say some superficial things. Sure enough, a wisp of an arc arose on the corners of Lin Wenjun's mouth as she said, "It can't be considered as guidance. I made you wait for so many days because I wanted to see if you're worthy of me doing this. Now it would seem like you've barely passed." Lin Sun broke into a cold sweat in his heart. Was this also a test? This woman's way of doing things was really unpredictable. "Promise me one thing. Take Xiaocheng to the Green Hills Mountain in Fengxi Province. When you get there, someone will naturally arrange for you to go to Dongxing territory." Speaking of this, Lin Wenjun suddenly sat up straight with a solemn and unprecedentedly serious look. "What do you think?" the Green Hills Mountain in Fengxi Province? Lin Sun had never heard of this place at all. But seeing Lin Wenjun's solemn look, he realized that if he refused, she would be extremely disappointed. Of course, it's okay if you refuse, but Lin Wenjun suddenly sighed lightly while her beautiful brows knit together, and her gorgeous face that could be said to be drop-dead gorgeous had an indescribable sense of loss and helplessness. Any man that saw her like this would probably feel pity in his heart. After a short while, she revealed a dazed expression and said in a light voice, "I'm truly at my wit's end. I originally thought that I would be able to find a way to resolve this in the next few days, but I never imagined that the enemy had already cut off all my options and caused me to have no path of retreat. For now I can only resort to this enemy." There was no way out. Lin Sun was keenly aware that Lin Wenjun's situation might be at the end of her rope, so she had no choice but to entrust Xiaochong to him, a stranger. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun agreed, "Xiaochong is the first friend I met since I came to Fire Spirit Province. Since Senior has entrusted me with this task, I will certainly not refuse." It was not only to get help to go to Dongxing territory, but more importantly, this matter involved Xiaochong, so Lin Sun couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Lin Wenjun couldn't help but be slightly surprised when she saw Lin Sun agree so readily, and a wisp of gratification suffused her eyes. But right after that, she took a deep breath and said, "Listen to me first before making a decision. There are numerous dangers in this, so I naturally can't conceal it from you." As early as in the ancient times, the Green Hills Fox tribe had an old enemy, Black Sea Dog tribe. The Green Hills Fox tribe and the Black Sea Dog tribe were like fire and water. They had fought against each other for countless years, and the blood feud had accumulated from generation to generation, which could not be resolved at all. However, at this moment, the Green Hills Fox tribe had declined, and its clansmen were few and far between. Its forces were far inferior to the past, and it had lost the glory of the ancient times a long time ago. It was even to the extent that for the sake of survival, the Green Hills Fox tribe had no choice but to go into hiding and live a difficult and dangerous life that outsiders couldn't imagine. On the other hand, the Black Sea Dog tribe was completely different from the Green Hills Fox tribe. They had survived until now, and their forces were growing larger and larger. Their resources and reserves were deep and prosperous, and they were filled with geniuses and experts. They could be considered as a first-rate power in the entire ancient Desolation region. Under such circumstances, it was not hard to imagine how difficult it was for the heavenly foxes of the Green Hills, who were already declining and declining, to survive as their mortal enemy. Lin Wenjun was from the Green Hills Fox tribe. Originally, she had another identity, the sect master of the Star Vault Taoist sect. However, news of it was leaked somehow, causing her identity to be seen through, and it drew the attention of their old enemy, the Black Sea Dog tribe. Just over 10 days ago, Lin Wenjun had been besieged by the experts sent by the Black Sea Dog tribe, and she had almost been captured. Do you understand now? My enemy is the Black Sea Dog tribe. They are a colossus, and their forces are so terrifying that they have already spread throughout the 4 domains of the ancient Desolation region. If you agree to this, you might be implicated, and the Black Sea Dog tribe will take revenge on you. After speaking, Lin Wenjun looked at Lin Sun quietly. She had already made up her mind. Even if Lin Sun didn't agree, she would still help the young man in front of her. She had already heard about Xia Xiaochong's trial in the Purple Bull Mountain. She knew that if it wasn't for Lin Sun, Xia Xiaochong would have encountered many unpredictable dangers. Lin Sun looked at Xia Xiaochong, who was sleeping on the bed. He recalled all the experiences he had with Xia Xiaochong since he first came to the ancient Desolation region, and he couldn't help but smile knowingly. She was an innocent, pure, lively, and adorable young girl. She was as clean as a piece of white glass. But more importantly, Xia Xiaochong was the first friend he had after entering the ancient Desolation region. It was already destined that no matter what the situation was, Lin Sun would definitely not stand by and watch. Therefore, when he withdrew his gaze, he calmly agreed to this matter. He understood the danger, but he didn't care. In the ancient desolation region, he was all alone, so he naturally wasn't afraid of anyone. Moreover, his enemies included the Heavenly Sword sect, the Heavens Pivot Holy Land, the Spirit Treasure Holy Land, and so on. As the saying went, when there were lice, one wouldn't be afraid of an itch, and a barefooted person wouldn't be afraid of someone wearing shoes. Lin Sun didn't mind offending a so-called powerful force because of this. Are you sure? Lin Wenjun was prepared to be rejected by Lin Sun, but she really didn't expect that Lin Sun would still agree so calmly after knowing all the reasons. Lin Sun smiled. Senior, do you think I'm joking? Why? Lin Wenjun was stunned, as if she was getting to know Lin Sun all over again. I have a sister called Xiaji. Lin Sun gave a very strange reason, and he said it very seriously. Xiaochong's surname is also Xia. This is fate. The heavens have already decided that there should be such a cause and effect. If I refuse, wouldn't I be letting down the heavens' good intentions? Lin Wenjun's pair of phoenix eyes shone brightly, like the ripples of autumn water. She seemed to be very touched, and after a while she said faintly, Xiaochong's luck is better than mine. At least she has her eyes on a man who is worth trusting. As for me, let's not talk about it. She seemed to have recalled some unbearable past. Lin Sun couldn't help but smile bitterly. What did she mean by worth trusting? But after thinking about it, Lin Sun understood why Xia Xiaochong always liked to use her master's words to attack and refute him. Lin Wenjun must have been deeply hurt in the past. Take this flying immortal token. Suddenly, Lin Wenjun hesitated for a moment, then took out a token and handed it to Lin Sun. Don't refuse. You value relationships, and I can't not repay you. Take this treasure as a token of my sincerity. This token seemed to be polished from mutton-fat white jade. It was the size of a palm, and it was suffused with wisps of light green halo. It was as smooth as a jade wall. One could vaguely see that the inside of the token was enshrouded with immortal qi, and a rain of light was flying. It actually had a sacred feeling, appearing very mysterious and extraordinary. Flying immortal token? Lin Sun was shocked. A jade token actually dared to be named Flying Immortal? This was too unusual. In an instant, he concluded that this token was absolutely priceless, and its origin was extremely shocking. Sure enough, in the next moment, Lin Wenjun said via voice transmission, You must take good care of this item. Don't easily reveal it. It is a secret treasure passed down by the ancestor of Qingqiu's celestial fox. It is related to the great secret of Kunlun ruins, one of the 4 great ancient ruins of gods. Even saints will have the greed to kill and seize the treasure when they see it. Chapter 806. The Flying Immortal Token was actually related to the Kunlun ruins. Lin Sun's heart trembled, and he could not calm down at all. In an instant, he recalled the Tao hymn he had obtained from the Heart Mountain. Stepping on the starry Han shoes, strolling up Kunlun, raising his sleeves to embrace the sun and moon, the heavens enter the palm lines, I came from the mortal world, lightly knocking on the door of longevity. The wondrous method reveals one's nature, and the Tao is given to the fated. According to Old Toad, this mysterious Tao hymn definitely hid a shocking secret. Moreover, Old Toad had analyzed that the first sentence of this Tao hymn was very likely related to the Kunlun ruins. The Kunlun ruins was one of the 4 most mysterious Tao ruins of the ancient times. It was also known as the Ruins of God. Legend had it that if one wanted to ascend Kunlun, they had to pass through the ancient Star Han path that lay above the mysterious Zhou. However, the owner of the Tao hymn treated the ancient Star Han path as a shoe and strolled up Kunlun. Based on this boldness, one could tell how terrifying the cultivation of the owner of the Tao hymn was. Lin Sun clearly remembered how Old Toad had sighed emotionally at that time. he had said that the Kunlun ruins was even more mysterious than the ultimate ruins. Rumor had it that it was related to the true path of immortality. Even among the ancient sages, there were not many who could see the true face of Kunlun. This imperceptibly caused the Kunlun ruins to become even more mysterious and ethereal, like a miracle that could not be seen. However, Lin Sun did not expect the flying immortal token that Lin Wenjun had taken out to be related to the Kunlun ruins. This was too shocking. Even Lin Sun could not calm down for a moment. If it was really as Lin Wenjun had said, that the flying immortal token was passed down from the ancestors of the Qingqiu heavenly fox lineage, then there was no doubt that this item was definitely a treasure of immeasurable value. It was no wonder that Lin Wenjun would say that even sages would be jealous and kill to snatch the treasure. This was a treasure related to the Kunlun ruins. Even a true god would be tempted if he saw it. According to what I know, there should be 9 flying immortal tokens in this world. Other than this one, the Black Sea Tengu race also has one. The ancient Taoist orthodoxy known as the Little Western Paradise in the East Victory World, the Blessed Fahua Pure Lands, also has one. As for the other 4, I don't know who has them. Lin Wenjun's expression was a little complicated. In ancient times, the hatred between the lineage of the Green Hill Heavenly Fox and the lineage of the Black Sea Heavenly Hound arose because of this. Lin Sun was stunned and said, "Senior, this thing is too precious. I'm afraid it's inappropriate to give it to me." He was indeed very tempted. After all, there was a mysterious Tao hymn hidden in his wordless pagoda. It might be related to the Kunlun ruins. If he could obtain the flying immortal token, he would definitely be able to catch a glimpse of the Kunlun ruins as long as he had the chance to get close to it in the future. However, he was similarly clearly aware that this mysterious command token was extremely troublesome. It was too precious and extraordinary, and if he were to accept it, then he would owe too much. Lin Wenjun smiled. It's been countless years, but until now, the lineage of the Green Hill Heavenly Fox has almost been destroyed, and we still haven't unearthed the true secret of the flying immortal token. Even if it stays in my hands, it's useless. It might even be taken away by the Black Sea Heavenly Hound tribe. Instead of letting them take advantage of it, it's better to give it to you. After saying that, she stood up and looked out of the window at the night sky. A pair of black eyebrows suddenly rose and she said, "Lin Sun, there's no time to lose. You should leave with little Chong now. I'm worried that it won't be long before those black dog bastards with a keen sense of smell catch up with us." Lin Sun's heart trembled, and he didn't dare to let his imagination run wild anymore. He said, "Senior, we can leave together." Lin Wenjun shook her head. "Only if I stay can I create time for you to leave. Otherwise, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave." Speaking of this, she turned around and stared at Lin Sun, saying, "Go, the further the better. When we reach the Green Hill Mountain in Fengqi Province, you'll be safe. Remember, you must protect little Chong. No matter what, you must not let her fall into the hands of those black dog bastards." This was like entrusting an orphan to Lin Sun before her death, and it made Lin Sun's heart feel heavy. He really couldn't imagine that Lin Wenjun, a woman with unparalleled elegance and a beauty that could bring disaster to a country and people, would be in such a precarious and distressed situation. He also didn't expect that for Xia Xiaochong, she would rather choose to stay. Obviously, she was ready to sacrifice herself. It was late at night and the streets were bustling as before. The lights were like dragons. In an antique tea-house diagonally opposite the inn, Mo Feng sat by the window with a blank look on his face. The tea in his cup had turned cold, but he was completely unaware of it, because he hadn't taken a sip from the tea since the beginning. His mind was preoccupied at the moment, probably described Mo Feng's current state. Who could have imagined that Guy's strength was actually so terrifying? The scenes he saw in Pine Mist martial arts field today kept flashing in his mind, and it still made Mo Feng feel an unprecedented shock. What was a peerless talent? Mo Feng had heard a lot about it in the past, but it was only today that he'd personally witnessed the elegant demeanor of a true peerless talent. There was no lack of cultivators in the tea house, and all of them were fervently discussing the unparalleled battle today. All of them were speculating about the identities of Lin Sun and the girl in black. Mo Feng couldn't help but think, if I tell them that the youth they're talking about is in the inn diagonally across from here, would it cause an unimaginable uproar? Perhaps the inn would be trampled to the ground by the frenzied crowd? The more he thought about it, the more dejected he felt. He was originally an outstanding figure in the younger generation of Lingji sect, and he had an enviable identity and status. He had a bright future ahead of him. But everything he'd seen today caused Mo Feng to suddenly realize that he was just a pitiful frog at the bottom of a well in the past. Suddenly, a thin figure sat opposite him, and it startled Mo Feng, causing him to be jolted awake from his chaotic thoughts. That person was dressed in black, and there was even a silver-white mask on his face, which made him look very mysterious. This was the most popular attire in Yen capital tonight, and everyone was imitating the girl in black. However, when Mo Feng saw the mask on the man in black, he felt that it was a little funny and absurd, and he said in surprise, "Master, why are you imitating those youngsters?" The man in black sitting opposite him was actually Mo Feng's master, Han Yenke. "I'm just hiding my identity," Han Yenke said casually. Mo Feng was stunned, and then he felt a wave of terror in his heart. Why did he have to hide his identity? It was too simple. He was definitely carrying out some secret operation that no one knew about, and this operation was definitely related to the youth who was in the inn diagonally across from here. As expected, Mo Feng had guessed correctly. In the next moment, Han Yenke said, "This time, the headmaster and the 7 elders will take action together, and the Supreme Elder will be personally overseeing things. It can be said that everything is ready, and we're only missing one thing. By the way, how's the situation on your side?" Even the Supreme Elder was going to take action. Mo Feng's heart trembled. There was only a single Supreme Elder in the Spirit Pearl sect, and it was the renowned half-step King Realm expert in the entire fire spirit world, Sun Huan. He was a renowned old fellow in the 4 sects and 3 clans, and it was rumored that he was only a thread away from stepping into the King Realm. At the same time, Sun Huan was the stabilizing force of the Spirit Pearl sect, and it was only because of him that the Spirit Pearl sect was able to be ranked amongst the 4 sects and 3 clans. However, Mo Feng had never imagined that even the Supreme Elder Sun Huan would be dispatched to deal with that youth. If news of this were to spread, then it would definitely cause a monstrous storm. Mo Feng. Han Yenke frowned slightly because he noticed that Mo Feng was distracted, and it caused him to be slightly displeased. Ah! Mo Feng returned to her senses, and she forcefully restrained the shock in her heart before she said, "Master, that kid is currently in the nearby inn." Han Yank's expression eased up, and he nodded with satisfaction. "You've done well." But Mo Feng was slightly hesitant. "But what?" Han Yenke frowned. "Why has this disciple of mine become so irresolute and indecisive after I praised him? That's really too improper." Mo Feng gritted her teeth and told Han Yenke about the battle that occurred today. Han Yenke wasn't an idiot. He'd heard about the battle when he returned to Yen capital. After all, the impact of it was too great and it was being discussed everywhere. So, it was impossible for him to not know about it. At that time, even he sighed with emotion in his heart. That pair of man and woman were definitely peerless figures, and how great would it be if they were the disciples of the Spirit Pearl sect? "Why did you mention this?" Han Yenke was slightly puzzled. That young man was that kid. Mo Feng exposed the truth, and it caused Han Yank's entire body to stiffen. He almost tossed the teacup in his hand away while tempestuous waves arose in his heart. After a short while, he said with a gloomy expression, "So, it was him." He revealed a strength that completely exceeded his peers on Starfall Peak. "Why didn't I think of that?" Mo Feng hesitated for a moment before she said, Master, I feel that since this boy is so extraordinary, he's definitely not an ordinary person. He might even have a background that we don't know of. Since that's the case, as if he knew what he was going to say, he was interrupted by Han Yenke before he could finish. There's no need to say anything. You're still young, you don't understand what the big picture and opportunities are. General trend? Opportunity? Mo Feng hesitated to speak, and in the end, he sighed in his heart. He'd already discerned that his master's mind was already made up, and it couldn't be changed. However, he still couldn't understand why so many elders and experts of the sect had been gathered. Even the Grand Elder had been invited. Was it all for the so-called general trend and opportunity? On the other hand, Han Yenke was muttering in his heart. Perhaps killing this kid will draw some unnecessary trouble, but if I'm able to obtain the treasured vessel in his possession that seems to be a saint artifact, then it's worth it even if I have to pay some price. Because it was a treasure that could change the fate of a sect, and it could allow the Spirit Pearl sect to rise to the top of the Fire Spirit state. Otherwise, how could Grand Elder Sun Heng have been invited? There was only a single chance, and he had to seize it. So what if he was a peerless genius? He was only a young man in the end, and he was only at the heavenly insight realm. Perhaps he could go against a great cultivator at the reincarnation evolution realm, but so long as a half-step king realm expert appeared, then he was bound to suffer calamity. That day, old Free Kuting had almost killed this kid. Mo Feng, didn't you come into contact with him on a few occasions? Think of a way to draw this kid out of Flame Capital. Han Yenke took a deep breath and instructed in a low voice. Instead of calling it an instruction, it was actually no different than an order, and it revealed a tone that allowed no refusal. Mo Feng's figure stiffened, and he felt bitter in his heart. Chapter 807. Yes. In the end, Mo Feng nodded reluctantly. He couldn't disobey his master's order. Although he was very reluctant, he had to do so. Sometimes life was like this. 9 out of 10 things didn't go your way. However, when Mo Feng got up, he suddenly noticed that a familiar figure came out of the door of the inn diagonally opposite. It was the young man. Beside him was a girl. It was Xia Xiaochong, whom Mo Feng was very familiar with. It was already late at night. Where were they going? Mo Feng was stunned. It seems that they are going to leave. At the side, Han Yenke stood up as well. Under the illumination of the dim yellow light of the tea-house, his silver-white mask was suffused with a strange aura. It's none of your business. Stay here and wait for the news. As he spoke, Han Yenke had already left the tea-house and quietly followed the young man and the girl along the street. Plop. Seeing this, Mo Feng sat there listlessly, looking dejected. He was in a complicated mood. He couldn't tell whether he should be happy or sad. Perhaps this was the life he was going to face? It was late at night and the lights were not on. Walking in a hurry on the street, Lin soon felt a little heavy. Thinking of Lin Wenjun's quiet and smiling appearance before they parted, he sighed in his heart. Brother Lin, I'm right. My master won't stand you up. Xia Xiaochong said with a smile. Her pure little face was bright, which was particularly eye-catching in the dark night. The girl still looked carefree. She didn't know that once she left, she might never see her master again. This made Lin soon feel a touch of unspeakable pity in his heart. He was an orphan of Lin family and was brought up by Master Lu. He had experienced the parting with Master Lu, so he could understand the pain of parting forever. Xiaochong, let me take you to an interesting place, okay? Lin Sun said softly. Xia Xiaochong looked at Lin Sun suspiciously, wrinkled her small nose and said, Brother Lin, why do I feel that you are a little strange? Is it because you have been shocked? Are you still worried about touching a tigress's butt? Lin Sun was stunned and couldn't help laughing. He raised his hand and knocked on Xia Xiaochong's forehead, saying angrily, I'm afraid of her? Humph, you're underestimating me. If I see her again, you'll see how I'll deal with her." At the end of his speech, he had a heroic air about him. Xia Xiaochong giggled and said, "All right, then I'll wait for you to spank her ass until she cries out in pain." Lin Sun laughed. The two of them walked side by side on the street in the darkness of the night, gradually getting further and further away. On both sides of the street were waning lights, in the distance were sparse stars, row upon row of ancient buildings, and along the way, a series of the girls' crisp laughter that sounded like wind chimes fell. The youth kept smiling as he looked into the distance, his black eyes as deep and serene as the night. In the outskirts of Yendu, there were mountains everywhere. They were like beasts in hibernation, stretching endlessly into the night. Not only Yendu, but also the Fire Spirit State and even the major cities in Shihing World were almost surrounded by vast ancient mountains and forests, and many primitive and wild areas that had not been explored. The cyan-robed old woman looked at her miss who stood alone in silence, and a bad premonition arose in her heart. Miss had been standing there motionless for a quarter of an hour. "Miss, it's getting late. We should leave." She couldn't help reminding her. The girl in black seemed to have not heard her. Her figure was slender, and the curves of her body could be said to be perfect. Her skin was as white as congealed fat. Just by standing there casually, there was a kind of aloof, and refined temperament. The silver mask she wore added a mysterious color to her. The cyan-robed old woman was worried in her heart. Did something happen to her miss in today's duel? But was it possible? In the entire younger generation of Shihing World, there were only a handful of people who could be her miss's opponent, and there were even fewer people who could give her a blow. The cyan-robed old woman didn't believe that today's anticlimactic duel would really give her miss a blow. Was it because of the last blow? The cyan-robed old woman recalled the scene when Lin Sun arched his back like a dragon and hit her miss's buttocks fiercely. Her expression suddenly became slightly strange. The girl in black was surging with strong unwillingness in her heart. What happened today had such a great impact on her that she was almost stunned at that time, and her mind went blank for a short time. For her, this was undoubtedly an unforgivable negligence and mistake. The most annoying thing was that this blow was too shameful. At the thought of this, she couldn't suppress her anger at all. She couldn't wait to turn around and continue to look for that damn bastard. How dare he desecrate her in such an obscene and shameless way in front of so many people? It was absolutely a great shame. After today's duel, she had been frantically looking for Lin Sun's trace in the whole Yen capital, but in the end, she found nothing. Now she had to leave, and she was too unwilling to give up. "Don't let me catch you." The girl in black made up her mind and said one word at a time. Then, she took a deep breath and regained her usual calmness and confidence. It seemed that the otherworldly fairy had returned. "Find out who that young man is. No matter how mysterious he is, find him at all costs." The girl in black said calmly and ethereally. Her voice echoed in the night like the sound of nature. "Yes." The cyan-robed old woman didn't dare to hesitate. She realized that this time, her miss was really angry and hated that young man. After all, her miss had never been desecrated like this since she was a child. If it was known by others, it would definitely have an unpredictable impact on her miss's reputation. "You must tell me as soon as possible," the girl in black said. The cyan-robed old woman was shocked. In fact, even if her miss didn't order her to do so, she would do it. In the Fire Spirit Province, where there was no king, there was a dazzling young man who could compete with her Mississippi. However, he had been unknown before, and even the local practitioners in Yen capital didn't know who he was. He seemed to be too mysterious. Because of this, it was worthwhile to find out his background at all costs. The cyan-robed old woman seemed to have noticed something, and her expression suddenly changed. Her figure flashed and vanished with the girl in black. In merely a short moment, a group suddenly appeared soundlessly on the boundless mountain range in the distance, and they flashed towards Yen capital under the veil of night. If one looked carefully, one would notice that numerous figures were bathed in black flames, and it was a strange and ghastly sight. They were riding on giant black horses with terrifying appearances. The black horses' hooves were like iron pillars, their eyes were scarlet red like copper bells, and their bodies were like small hills that seethed with surging black mist. They seemed like ghost horses that came from hell. At the center of the group was a black treasured carriage. The carriage was carried by 8 black-clothed figures, and it moved soundlessly through the sky. It seemed very special, and it was like a ghost king that came from hell was riding it. From the beginning until the end it was completely silent, and it was like the legendary night parade of 100 ghosts. This scene was too impactful, and it seemed extremely horrifying under the veil of night. Anyone who saw this scene would probably feel their scalp go numb and fear arise in their hearts. Black Nightmare Cavalry. This is a group from the Black Nightmare Tengu clan. In the shadows, the cyan-robed old woman's eyes surged with divine light, and she seemed to be slightly moved. That carriage seems to be the Black Nightmare treasure carriage. That's one of the ancestral artifacts of the Black Nightmare Tengu clan. Even though it isn't as formidable as a saint artifact, it can still be said to be boundlessly terrifying. Those that are able to ride such an ancestral artifact surely possess extraordinary identities. The Black Nightmare Tengu clan. A trace of imperceptible detest flashed through the girl's clear eyes that were like stars. In her impression, this clan had always been known for being gloomy, bloody, and slaughtering. They were just like the Devil clan, and they caused all the cultivators in the world to turn pale at the mention of them. The most terrifying thing was that this clan's methods were extremely brutal and bloody, and they'd committed countless atrocities in the ancient Desolation region. They could be said to be infamous and poisonous. However, it was a pity that this clan's resources and reserves were extremely deep, and their forces were enormous. They were spread throughout the 4 great dimensions of the ancient Desolation region, so it was practically impossible to uproot them. Thus, even some ancient sects weren't willing to easily come into contact with this clan. Only when the group of Black Nightmare Cavalry vanished did the cyan-robed old woman and young woman walk out from the shadows, and their gazes simultaneously shot towards Yen capital that was enveloped by the veil of night. The Black Nightmare Tengu clan has sent out such a formidable force, and they even sent out a great figure that rode the Black Nightmare treasure carriage. An unpredictable storm is probably going to arise in Yen capital. The cyan-robed old woman sighed lightly. The battle of the world is about to arrive, and the world has started to become turbulent. It probably won't be long before the entire West Ocean region, and even the entire ancient Desolation region, will become more and more chaotic, and unpredictable calamities and battles will arise. I'm even more curious about why the Black Nightmare Tengu clan has come to Yen capital this time. A strange glow surged within the young woman's eyes. A mysterious ancient freak is hiding within the divine formation of Starfall Peak in the tiny Fire Spirit Prefecture. Now, it has even drawn the attention of the Black Nightmare Tengu clan. This is slightly unusual. At the same time, she added in her heart, there's also that despicable, and shameless bastard. Even though his character is extremely terrible, he can be considered as a peerless young genius in the end. Young miss, it's time for us to leave. The cyan-robed old woman saw through the young woman's thoughts with a single glance, and she knew that the young woman intended to stay behind and get even with that young man. The young woman was stunned, and she sighed after a short while. Never mind, so be it. We'll meet again sooner or later. But at that time, a wisp of resentment flashed through her clear eyes. I'll definitely castrate that bastard. The cyan-robed old woman smiled and said, if nothing unexpected happens, then a figure like that young man is bound to participate in the Tao discussion lantern gathering. At that time, perhaps young miss will be able to take revenge. The young woman in a black dress acknowledged, and then she strode through the air and left. At the same time, Lin soon brought Xia Xiaochong along as he gazed at the dark wilderness in the distance. He said, "Xiaochong, it might not be peaceful from now on. You have to be prepared." Xia Xiaochong replied, "Big brother Lin Sun, I'll listen to you. It's fine as long as you don't abduct me." Lin Sun gnashed his teeth in secret. "Do I look like someone who would deceive an ignorant young woman?" Chapter 808. They're here. Outside the window, it was as dark as ink, with only a few lights left. Lin Wenjun stood in front of the window. Her jade face was calm and her phoenix eyes were filled with a bone-chilling hatred. Although she could not determine the enemy's whereabouts, as an opponent who had fought against the Black Demon Tengu tribe for many years, Lin Wenjun's intuition told her that the Black Dog bastards were here. "Insect, take care." Lin Wenjun took a deep breath. Her figure flashed and disappeared from the window. Her graceful figure flickered and flashed towards the boundless night sky. She did not hide herself from the beginning. Just a moment later, a mournful dog bark sounded in the empty and dark alley in the distance. Then, a group of Black Nightmare Spirit cavalry silently appeared, quickly chasing in the direction that Lin Wenjun escaped in. In the suburbs, ancient trees towered into the sky and peaks gathered together. Xia Xiaochong, who was shuttling through the forest, suddenly looked back and asked in confusion, "Brother Lin, why do I seem to hear a wolf howl? It's so creepy." Lin Sun's black eyes flashed coldly and he said, "Don't worry about it. Let's go." He knew that the experts of the Black Sea Tengu clan had already appeared, and Lin Wenjun had probably also begun to flee with her life hanging in the balance. This made Lin Sun suddenly realize a problem he had neglected before. Why did Lin Wenjun do this? In an instant, he looked at Xia Xiaochong beside him. The girl's face was pure, and her big clear eyes were blinking. She was curiously looking at the flowers and plants she saw along the way, looking very pure and innocent. Lin Sun understood. He remembered the disaster that happened in the mine prison years ago. At that time, Master Lu did the same, leaving the last chance for him to escape. What Lin Wenjun did now was almost exactly the same as Master Lu. Everything was to give Xia Xiaochong a chance to live. "My young friend, please stay." Suddenly, a gentle voice sounded in the distance. Lin Sun stopped abruptly, and a cold light flashed in the depths of his black eyes. He raised his head and saw an old man dressed in black. He had a scholarly appearance and a sage-like demeanor. He floated over from afar in the night. A top practitioner of the reincarnation development realm. In an instant, Lin Sun determined the opponent's cultivation, and he was very sure that the opponent was a human practitioner, not from the Black Sea Tengu tribe. The old man stopped 100 feet away and stopped moving forward. He smiled warmly and said, "Young friend, don't be nervous. I'm Han Yenke from the Spirit Pearl sect. I took the liberty to come here because I have something to discuss with you." Lingji sect? Isn't this the sect Wind Void belongs to? Lin Sun looked back at Xia Xiaochong, who nodded and said, "Brother Lin, I met this senior a few days ago at the end of the sect trial." Lin Sun replied with an "oh," but he was still vigilant in his heart. This old guy suddenly came here in the middle of the night and said that he had something to discuss with him. It was obviously nonsense. No matter how important the matter was there a need to come to the wilderness in the middle of the night to see him? There must be a reason behind this abnormality. Although Lin Sun was young, he had experienced a lot of bloodshed and dangers since he started his cultivation. His rich experience was incomparable to that of ordinary elders. He didn't need to think at all to know that there was something wrong with this Han Yenke. "I'm sorry, I'm not in the mood to talk now. Please go back," Lin Sun directly refused, not giving Han Yenke a chance to speak at all. After that, he left directly with Xia Xiaochong, leaving Han Yenke only to see the back of his head, which seemed very rude. This made Han Yenke stunned. He was angry in his heart, but he said with a smile, "Young friend, this is a great thing. It's a pity for you to refuse like this." As he spoke, he followed Lin Sun. Lin Sun suddenly stopped and said without looking back, "If you dare to follow me again, don't blame me for being rude." His voice was calm, but it revealed a touch of decisive, killing intent, which made the surrounding atmosphere suddenly tense and murderous. Han Yank's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect that this young man would be so vigilant and did not give him a chance to approach at all. "Young friend, what do you mean by this? I came here with good intentions to make friends with you, but you threaten me. Isn't this a little too much and rude?" His face darkened. Lin Sun paid no attention to him, and he just quickened his pace. This caused a strand of rage to arise in Han Yank's heart, and his expression became extremely gloomy as he said coldly, "Young friend, if you don't stop, then I'm afraid a calamity will befall you. Fuck off." When Lin Sun saw that Han Yenke had finally torn off his disguise, Lin Sun instantly stopped holding back. "What a reckless little bastard! Do you really think that you can be lawless just because you're a peerless genius of the younger generation?" Han Yenke started laughing out of extreme rage, and he was utterly infuriated. As an elder of Lingji sect, he could be considered to be a great figure in the fire spirit state that commanded great power. When had he ever been reprimanded like this by a junior? The disdain and humiliation from the word "fuck off" was undoubtedly too direct, and it caused Han Yenke to be unable to endure it. Swoosh! Lin Sun remained silent, yet a wisp of a sharp light that was white like snow and almost translucent flashed out from his body, and it suddenly soared through the sky towards Han Yenke. Its speed was too swift, and it was like a dazzling silver bolt of lightning that tore through the sky and illuminated the night sky. It possessed a peerless sharpness, and it was extremely resplendent and dazzling. Swish! Han Yenke didn't even have the time to dodge, and a strand of hair by his ear was severed. Moreover, the sharp light was too swift and fierce, and it left a bloody mark on his face. This was the strength of the broken blade. Combined with Lin Sun's current strength, it was absolutely capable of easily annihilating an expert at the reincarnation developing realm. Lin Sun merely intended to teach Han Yenke a lesson with this strike and make Han Yenke retreat in the face of difficulties. After all, there wasn't any deep enmity between them, and it would be going too far to strike ruthlessly. "Don't provoke my bottom line again." Lin Sun left behind these words before leaving with Xia Xiaochong. Han Yank's entire body stiffened while he broke out in cold sweat. At that instant just now, he was completely terrified, and it was as if he'd wandered on the edge of death. He was utterly unable to imagine that this young man was actually formidable to such an extent, and it had completely exceeded his previous expectations and judgment. Even if a peerless genius of the younger generation came, it would be impossible for him to react in a single strike. Han Yenke couldn't tell whether it was anger or fear surging in his heart. It was like stormy waves surging in his chest, and he couldn't calm down. At this moment, a strange, sharp whistle suddenly sounded in the distant night sky, like the cry of an owl. Han Yank's spirit was immediately refreshed. Headmaster and Tai Shang Elder are ready. The whistle was a signal that told Han Yenke that the killing was ready, and they were just waiting for the prey to enter the trap. The reason why Han Yenke showed up to see Lin Sun before was nothing more than to stall for time. Han Yenke no longer hesitated, and the fear in his heart was swept away. In his view, now the arrow on the bowstring had to be shot, and there was no room for maneuver. And with the headmaster and Tai Shang Elder in charge, even if the boy's fighting capacity was against the natural order, he was doomed to die tonight. "Xiaochong, I'll inconvenience you for a moment." In the forest ahead, Lin Sun frowned, and a cold, killing intent flashed in his black eyes. Without waiting for Xia Xiaochong's consent, he put the ladder into the wordless pagoda. Then, he suddenly turned around, and his cold eyes burst with divine light. He glanced around and said, "I didn't expect that before those black dogs came, you old beasts would be the first to lose control. Since you are here, show yourself." Young man, it's not good to speak dirty words. It seems very uneducated. In the silence, a middle-aged man in neat clothes with a majestic face appeared in the distant night with his hands behind his back. Almost at the same time, in other directions, figures appeared one after another. There were old men, strong men, enchanting beautiful women, and handsome men. There were more than 10 people in total. Although they looked different and dressed differently, they were all great practitioners of reincarnation development realm, and some of them were even the top figures in reincarnation development realm. A force like this could definitely stir up trouble in the Yen capital and intimidate the entire region. But now it was just to deal with Lin Sun alone. If other practitioners saw this, their jaws would probably drop. You old beasts came out in the middle of the night to deal with a junior like me, and you say that I'm uneducated? I think you're more shameless. Lin Sun sneered, not afraid at all. But he was very puzzled why these great practitioners came to deal with him. He noticed that Han Yenke was also among them. There was no doubt that these great practitioners must be from Lingji sect. Young man, you have seen the situation now. Hand over the treasure ship in your hand, and I can spare your life, said the dignified middle-aged man. He was the leader of Lingji sect, Hua Qinqi, a great practitioner in the fulfillment of reincarnation development realm. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. What's that? Don't play dumb. When you were at Starfall Peak, you used this treasure ship to escape from old freak Ku Ting's pursuit. I saw it clearly at that time. Han Yenke scolded loudly. It turned out that they had their eyes on the vast universe arc and wanted to kill Lin Sun and seize the treasure tonight. Suddenly, Lin Sun understood, which made him feel a lot more relaxed. Originally, he was a little worried that these fellows had appeared at the behest of the Black Nightmare Tengu tribe. Now, he could finally confirm that it was merely for the sake of seizing the treasure. Lin Sun smiled, and his dark eyes swept over the people of Lingji sect present. He said, Back then, I spared your Lingji sect's Mo Feng and the others in Purple Ox Mountain. I didn't expect that you would repay my kindness with enmity and even want to seize my treasure. How shameless of you! Everyone's faces darkened, and they were very annoyed. They felt that they were making a fuss over a minor issue by mobilizing such a large force. Who would have thought that this young man would act as if he didn't take them seriously? This was too arrogant. Young man, I'll give you one last chance. Hand over the treasure ship now, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, you'll die, shouted a mighty man. His eyes were icy cold and full of killing intent, and he had an oppressive aura. The others looked hostile as well, and they were ready to attack and kill. Why are you talking so much nonsense with him? Quickly kill him and take the treasure ship from his corpse, said the beautiful middle-aged woman. Her attitude was even more aggressive and tyrannical. Chapter 809. Kill me first and then seize the treasure? Fine. Amidst the loud shout, a middle-aged cultivator who looked like a scholar rushed out. Boom. He pressed his palm down and condensed it into a palm print, and then he slapped it down fiercely. The void instantly exploded, and the rocks there turned into powder while the ancient trees turned into sawdust. Swish! Lin Sun's figure flashed lightly and he dodged it. However, the palm print created a large pit where he stood, causing the ground to crack and soil to fly up into the sky. It was conceivable how ferocious the middle-aged scholar's attack was. The void trembled, and a dazzling golden ray of light flashed out like a bolt of lightning. It carried a piercing and fierce aura. It was a golden spiritual sword from Han Yang's hand. It was sharp and murderous. Lin Sun dodged again, and the mountain he was standing on was directly slashed in half. The mountain collapsed with a rumble that shook the world. As expected of a peerless figure of the younger generation. Little fellow, a wise man submits to circumstances. Wouldn't it be a pity if you died like this? Hua Qinqi, the sect master of Lingji sect, sighed with a compassionate look. Boom! As he spoke, another person attacked, and he let out a soul-stirring roar that shook the heavens and the earth. It was a cold young man with hair that was dazzling like fire. As soon as he attacked, he was like a peerless ferocious ape, and his ferocious aura covered the heavens and the earth. Subsequently, the other big shots of Lingji's sect attacked one after another. Each of them was more ruthless than the other, and their killing intent was like a tide that covered the heavens and the earth. Swish, swish, swish. Their figures flickered with dazzling divine light and strong killing intent, and they sealed off the forest. Obviously, Han Yenke had told them that Lin Sun had escaped from Ku Ting's pursuit with the help of the treasure ship, and this was to prevent Lin Sun from using the same trick again. Look, you're like a fish in a net, a turtle in a jar. There's no way out for you now. Instead of dying in vain, why don't you take the initiative to hand over the treasure ship? Hua Qingqi sighed again. He was very calm and composed, and he seemed to have Lin Sun under his control. You're extremely talented and possess boundless potential, and your future is even more limitless. It causes me to be unable to help myself from cherishing talent. If you surrender now, then perhaps I won't just spare your life, I'll even take you as a disciple and foster you. Hua Qingqi suggested with a smile. At the same time he spoke, an expanse of the glow of blades and shadows of swords had appeared here. All the great cultivators of Spirit Pearl sect had attacked, and it caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to fall into chaos and unrest. Lin Sun didn't act rashly. He kept dodging, but his eyes were fixed in a certain direction. Over there, he sensed an even more dangerous aura. There seemed to be a half-step King Realm old monster hiding in the dark. This was a great potential threat. Lin Sun was silent for a moment and suddenly sighed. Tonight is really an eventful time. If you came on another day and I was in a good mood, I might be able to save my life, but now, when he spoke up to hear, his eyes that were deep like abysses suddenly emanated a wisp of terrifying divine light, and it was like a dazzling bolt of lightning that tore through the veil of night. All of you, stay here. This was an ancient mountain forest that was quite far from Yendu City. The terrain was undulating, and there were many ancient trees here. Under the dim light of night, this place had long since become chaotic. Even the cries of insects could not be heard, leaving only a somber and deathly stillness. Lin Sun stood there alone in surprise. His body was glowing, and his eyes were bursting with electric light. His words were calm and resolute, but Hua Qingqi and the others were all stunned. They almost thought they had heard it wrong. At a time like this brat actually still dared to boast so shamelessly. Clearly, he was tired of living. A terrifying aura filled the air and surged through the forest. This was the power of a great cultivator of reincarnation developing realm. Although he didn't attack again, his murderous aura was monstrous. Don't hesitate. Kill him. Hua Qingqi sighed softly with a look of pity. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of great cultivators of reincarnation developing realm moved and attacked Lin Sun from different directions. In an instant, the light of treasures poured down, thunder and lightning intertwined, and divine light gushed out. A real battle of killing had begun. Chop! Han Yenke took out his golden spiritual sword. Like an angry sword god, he attacked Lin Sun. The sword light swept across the universe like a waterfall. Buzz! The void collapsed. The mighty man shouted. His figure was like a mountain. He punched out, and all the rocks nearby were smashed into powder. The terrible airflow was about to cover Lin Sun. Whoosh! On the other side, the cold-looking young man with burning red hair flashed like a violent ape. He was as fast as lightning, and his 5 fingers were like dragon claws, grabbing at Lin Sun's head. Tut! The beautiful middle-aged woman uttered a strange incantation and took out a long purple whip, which was wrapped with dense and terrible symbols. Electric light flowed and whipped the void, releasing a scalp-numbing murderous aura. At this moment, other great cultivators of Lingji sect also used their own secret methods and treasures to attack Lin Sun from all directions. This scene could simply be described as world-shocking. If it was any expert at the heavenly insight stage in the world, that expert would probably feel despair and be powerless to resist. Undoubtedly, they didn't intend to give Lin Sun a chance. They wanted to kill him at one stroke. But at this moment, Lin Sun didn't dodge as before. Instead, he chose to take the initiative to attack. Boom! He rushed out, and the snow-white ice dragon soared into the sky, directly shattering the long purple whip. At the same time, he issued the Puleo roar. The terrible sound wave spread and dissolved most of the attacks. Then, he punched out. Crack! Blood splashed, and the sound of bones breaking rang out. The mighty man had intended to smash Lin Sun's chest with a punch, but Lin Sun's right arm was directly smashed by Lin Sun. If he hadn't dodged in time, the power of this punch could even smash half of his body. The mighty man screamed. He was so scared that his soul almost flew out of his body, and his face was pale. Boom! At this time, Lin Sun had already rushed to the other side. His footsteps cracked the earth, and his figure tore the void. His black hair flew in the air, and his eyes were as cold as lightning. He seemed to have turned into a demon, with a domineering and terrible momentum. Hurry up! Kill him now! In the distance, Hua Qinqi was frightened and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Who would have thought that the young man would burst out such terrible power at the beginning of the battle? Under the siege of a group of reincarnation developing realm practitioners, Lin Sun still dared to rush forward and seriously injured one of them with one blow. How fierce he was! Kill! Lin Sun was like a mad dragon getting off its shackles. His fist was vast, powerful, and full of destructive breath, which smashed the grasp of the stern young man. Seeing that the situation was not good, the latter decisively withdrew. Lin Sun didn't chase after him, but continued to kill others. Back in the bloodthirsty battlefield, he had killed many strong barbarians and spiritual awakeners who were comparable to reincarnation developing realm, and even many half-step king realm practitioners. Now, his cultivation in the martial Tao had become even more profound and powerful, and it was on the verge of perfection. Under such circumstances, how could he take these guys seriously? The reason why he didn't make a move just now was that he didn't want to make too much noise to avoid attracting the attention of the strong practitioners of Black Demon Tengu tribe. But seeing that the opponent was going to kill him, he didn't have any scruples and immediately used his strongest means. Boom! Lin Sun's essence, qi, and spirit seemed to be burning, reaching an unprecedented peak state. His every move was full of destructive power. This was a kind of power that belonged to the top king of Tao Insight Realm. It could swallow mountains and rivers, and it could overlook all enemies. Even if it was a cross-realm battle, the peerless style couldn't be suppressed by just anyone. Kill. In an instant, Lin Sun exerted the Swanee seal. With a bang, a reincarnation developing realm practitioner was directly slapped away and smashed to the point that countless bones in his body were broken, emitting cracking sounds. Blood spurted from his mouth and nose, looking extremely miserable. It was too fierce. At this moment, the other big shots of Lingji's sect were shocked. They had long regarded Lin Sun as a formidable enemy and had never been careless. Otherwise, it would be impossible for so many high-level figures of Lingji's sect to deal with a young man of Tao Insight Realm. But until now, they found that they had still underestimated the terror of this young man. That kind of heaven-defying combat strength and that monstrous aura of supremacy were rare even amongst the ranks of peerless geniuses. It even made people suspect that this young man had already surpassed the scope of the so-called peerless talents. After all, even those peerless talents in the world, who might be able to kill cross-realm enemies, would suffer when faced with the siege of so many practitioners of reincarnation developing realm. But this young man, who was like a demon god, attacked strongly in the siege and injured two of them one after another. This was too terrifying. In the field, the beautiful middle-aged woman screamed. Her purple whip was caught by Lin Sun and pulled hard, pulling her whole body towards Lin Sun. She was unwilling to let go. This purple whip was a rare treasure that she had treasured in the past and would not use easily. Crack! Just when she hesitated for a moment, Lin Sun had already slapped her with a fierce palm, filled with blazing divine brilliance, and sent her flying. Blood flowed from her 7 orifices, and she was beyond recognition. She was seriously injured. Puff! Almost at the same time, a golden spiritual sword rushed towards Lin Sun. It was cunning, ruthless, and extremely fierce. However, before it could even approach, a broken blade that was jade white like snow flashed out, and with a light slash, the golden spirit sword was instantly slashed into 2 like tofu. Han Yenke was originally aggressive and wanted to take this opportunity to cut off Lin Sun's neck. But now he was panic-stricken and screamed, with his hair standing on end. His spiritual sword was actually destroyed so easily. But the fatal danger made Han Yenke have no time to think more. He quickly changed his direction to avoid Lin Sun's pursuit. Whoosh! But it was still a step too late. The broken blade swept in the void, and the snow-white light was accompanied by the peerless sharpness. With a puff, a bloody hole appeared in his abdomen. Blood sprayed like a waterfall, and his body was almost cut in half at the waist. Han Yenke let out a shrill scream and staggered back in the void. He was a top practitioner of reincarnation developing realm, but he was seriously injured in one blow. If it weren't for the timely help of his companions, this blow would have been enough to kill him. Everything happened in a flash. It was so fast that it was dazzling. If one's reaction was a little slow, he might be at risk of death. And this forest was completely destroyed. The ground was full of desolation, and the smell of gunpowder and blood filled the air. It was shocking. Boom! Lin Sun looked calm and his cold eyes were shining. He continued to rush forward. He was very calm, but also very terrifying. His power was getting stronger and stronger. He wanted to end the battle quickly. Chapter 8:10. Lin Sun had been through hundreds of battles since he started his cultivation. It was no different from walking out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Even if he was trapped in a tight encirclement at the moment, his reaction was still amazing and valiant. His power was overwhelming and he seized every opportunity to inflict heavy damage on his opponent. Bang! Suddenly, a figure rushed out like a ghost with a sharp awl in his hand. The awl emitted a dazzling cold light in the void and hit the back of Lin Sun's head. Without looking back, Lin Sun ran the Basha prohibition and released an invisible force that suddenly confined his opponent halfway like a bug caught in a spider web. Oh no! The opponent was horrified and struggled frantically. But Lin Sun had already taken advantage of this opportunity. He moved back abruptly, arched his back, and the shadow of Fu Shi appeared. Boom! The great practitioner screamed miserably. He was knocked hundreds of meters away like a kite with a broken string. Blood sprayed all over his body, and his bones were broken. Then, he fell to the ground in the void with a thud. His neck was almost broken. His eyes rolled up and he fainted directly. It was terrible. Being hit squarely by the negative smash, that kind of terrifying force was no less than being pushed by a divine mountain. At the same time, Lin Sun stared at the cold young man with burning red hair. This guy was extremely cunning in the battle just now. When he failed to hit Lin Sun, he retreated immediately. He was very difficult to deal with, which made Lin Sun miss many opportunities to kill him. Swish! The broken blade turned into a glimmer of peerless sharpness and flashed away in the night sky. It was a magic weapon controlled by the divine consciousness, so its speed was extremely fast. Puff! The cold young man failed to dodge and was hit by the broken blade. One of his ears was cut off. At the same time, his left arm and shoulder were also cut off and blood sprayed everywhere. But it had to be said that this man was extremely strong. When he was seriously injured, he had already rushed up and escaped far away. However, his expression had already become incomparably unsightly. Under the unbearable pain, he roared, "What a disgrace! Can't we subdue him with so many people?" The other great practitioners of Lingji sect also looked terrible. Since the beginning of the battle, 5 or 6 of their companions had been seriously injured and almost died several times. On the other hand, their opponents were completely unharmed, and their might grew even more domineering. This caused them to feel aggrieved and resentful in their hearts, and they felt extremely humiliated. "Little bastard, let's see how long you can run wild." At this moment, Hua Qingqi could no longer sit idly by. He also took action, his sleeves flapping as he summoned an ancient white jade cauldron. The cauldron was only a foot tall and had 3 legs and 2 handles. Its surface was engraved with ancient cloud patterns. Buzz! The jade cauldron soared into the sky and revolved as it glowed. Space seemed as if it was unable to bear its weight, and it rumbled and collapsed. Without a doubt, this was an extremely terrifying ancient treasure. Moreover, it was extremely complete without any flaws, causing its might to be even more extraordinary. Crash! As it rotated, the jade cauldron emitted white jade-like divine rainbows, which were hundreds of meters long, across the void and shrouded Lin Sun. The light was so brilliant that it illuminated the night sky. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. The broken sword swept through the air and clashed with the jade tripod, making banging sounds and surging divine light. To Lin Sun's surprise, the jade tripod was so strong that even the sharpness of the broken sword couldn't damage it. Hua Qingqi was even more surprised. His jade tripod had an extraordinary origin. It was a rare treasure obtained from a secret realm left behind in ancient times. Its power was so great that it could be called a Kingsway weapon. But now, it couldn't do anything to a broken sword. This made him immediately realize that the broken sword must be extraordinary. "Let's attack together and kill this man!" Hua Qingqi shouted with awe-inspiring power. His beard and hair flew in the air as he held the jade tripod in his hand and released white jade-like divine rainbows that shot through the world. At the same time, the other reincarnation developing realm practitioners moved together and attacked fiercely again. The forest in an area of 50 kilometers had fallen into destruction. It collapsed and sank into oblivion, and all living beings that resided within it had fled in panic a long time ago. The movement was so great that even the night sky was illuminated. The light of treasures shot into the sky and the divine splendor drifted, dazzling and blazing. Lin Sun sneered. He was extremely angry. These guys really wouldn't shed tears until they saw their coffins. He manipulated the broken sword to fight with the jade tripod in Hua Qingqi's hands. At the same time, he stepped into the void and moved forward, wantonly displaying the mysteries of the 9 strikes for shaking heaven in his fist. Time could not be delayed any longer. Although they were outside the wilderness, they were not far from Yen capital. The longer they stayed, the more likely it was to cause an accident. With a swish, Lin Sun's speed reached its limit. It was unbelievably fast. On the other hand, the force of his fist had been condensed to an extremely perfect state. A casual strike of his fist possessed the might to shake the heavens and the earth, split mountains, split oceans, and destroy everything. Boom! A practitioner in reincarnation developing realm was not afraid of Lin Sun at all. He fought with Lin Sun head-on, but his arms were broken and his armor was shattered. His body fell to the ground with a loud bang, his tendons and veins broken. This made Hua Qingqi and the others so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their socket. Not only had they not been able to do anything to Lin Sun, but they had also suffered heavy losses. If this situation continued, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Kill!" Hua Qingqi roared. He operated the jade tripod to the limit and attacked. However, the might of the broken blade could be said to be heaven-defying. After the transformation in the bloodthirsty battlefield, even though it was still damaged, it had recovered some of its former glory, and could be called a divine weapon. Although the jade tripod was strong, it could not do anything to the broken sword for a while. In the following time, Lin Sun seriously injured several reincarnation developing realm practitioners and killed 3 of them. His domineering, decisive, and brave momentum even made these big shots of Lingji sect shudder. Dong! A bronze mirror was sent flying. This was a rather mystical treasure that could shoot out spirit rune diagrams and construct a grand formation in the void to suppress and kill the opponent. But before it could show its power, it was sent flying by Lin Sun's punch, wailing incessantly. The expert that held the bronze mirror was astounded, and he was just about to dodge when an extremely dazzling and terrifying fist energy crushed through space and shot straight towards his face. It was over. The reincarnation developing realm cultivator felt despair in his heart. However, right at this moment, a terrifying aura swept out and suffused the surroundings. It caused the heavens and the earth to tremble while the clouds in the sky collapsed inch by inch. They were unable to endure this pressure. At the same time, Lin Sun suddenly withdrew his punch, and then his figure flashed as he retreated explosively into the sky while he looked towards the distance with his black eyes. After this unexpected event, the reincarnation developing realm cultivator who held the bronze mirror was lucky enough to survive. However, he was covered in cold sweat from shock, and his countenance was ghastly pale. "Young man, hand over the treasures in your possession and I'll spare your life." A tall and slender figure had suddenly appeared in the distance. He was bathed in dazzling divine radiance, and he was dazzling and terrifying like the sun under the veil of night. He was an old fellow at the half-step king realm, but he had the appearance of a young man. He wore a silver robe, had black hair that was coiled into a bun, and his handsome face carried a slightly cold and fierce aura. His eyes surged with the glow of the Grand Tao, and it seemed like the sun and moon were floating within them. They could illuminate the world and take away one's soul. Supreme Elder! Hua Qingqi and the others were pleasantly surprised, and they felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Earlier, they'd almost been unable to endure the feeling of frustration and rage. Now, they could finally turn the situation around. Because it was precisely the Supreme Elder of Lingji sect, Sun Huan, who was in charge of the overall situation in the shadows. He was an old fellow whose cultivation was only a thread away from the king realm. Even though he looked young, he was actually over 1,000 years old. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun remained indifferent when he witnessed such a scene, and he seemed as if he'd expected this. He said, "Old fellow, you've finally made an appearance. I've been waiting for you for a very long time, but I never expected that you would actually be so patient." Lin Sun's black eyes surged with a piercingly cold glow while killing intent surged in his heart. The spirit, energy, and essence in his entire body grew even more exuberant at this instant, and it seemed as if they were seething and blazing. Long before the battle had begun, he'd noticed that an old fellow was hiding in the shadows. If it wasn't for that, Lin Sun would have launched an unbridled slaughter a long time ago. It could be said that Lin Sun had spent most of his attention on guarding against this old fellow that was hiding in the shadows during the battle. Yet now that he'd been exposed, he wasn't a threat to Lin Sun any longer. "Little bastard, how dare you still act so arrogantly? You're really tired of living." Hua Qingqi's expression was extremely unsightly as he berated Lin Sun. "Kneel down and receive your death." The others spoke coldly as well. They felt that since Sun Huan had made an appearance, the outcome was decided, and Lin Sun would definitely die. After all, Sun Huan was the only remaining supreme elder of their Lingji sect, an old fellow at the half-step king realm who was renowned throughout the fire spirit state. As far as they were concerned, no matter how heaven-defying Lin Sun's combat strength was, it was absolutely impossible for him to survive. "Tell me, how do you want to die?" Sun Huan strode through the air, as if he was taking an idle stroll in his own courtyard. His eyes flowed with divine radiance, and he emanated a dignified aura that seemed as if he controlled the world. Moreover, his words were even more domineering and domineering. He seemed as if he held the power to decide one's life and death, and it was terrifying and oppressive. This was the source of this old fellow's confidence. He stood at the peak of a tall mountain, looked down upon all others, and looked down upon all cultivators below the king realm. Lin Sun smiled, and his snow-white teeth gleamed in the dark night. For others, the half-step king realm might be an unshakable lofty mountain that made them feel despair. But for Lin Sun, it really couldn't be said to be a big threat. After all, he had personally killed many half-step king realm barbarians in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel that it was ridiculous when he heard Sun Huan's words. His unbridled laughter made Hua Qingqi and the others' faces turn livid with anger. Hasn't this bastard realized the situation yet? He's simply arrogant to the point of seeking death. Sun Huan's expression was indifferent, but he was actually infuriated in his heart. Lin Sun was just a so-called peerless talent, and in the final analysis, he was just a young man at the Tao Insight realm. But Lin Sun dared to look down on him like this, which was no different from provoking his dignity to his face. Sun Huan sighed softly. Fine, since you don't want to choose the way to die, I'll send you off in the simplest way. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his sleeve, and like the legendary cosmos in the sleeve, a terrifying Taoist light was released, and it evolved into a blazing torrent that swept towards Lin Sun in an overwhelming manner. Chapter 8:11. Sun Heng's attack was simple, direct, and violent. This was a kind of absolute confidence in power, which was above the reincarnation developing realm. No matter how many secret skills and methods one mastered, he could break them with his own strength. Similarly, this was also the foundation and courage of a half-step king. A small bug could be killed with a flick of a finger, so there was no need to go to war. Boom! The light of the Tao surged like a tidal wave. It was dazzling and terrifying to the extreme, and it illuminated the heavens and the earth to the point it was snow-white. That scene made Hua Qingqi and the others tremble and almost suffocate. Even for them, it was the first time that they had seen Sun Heng fight, and such a vast and terrifying power made them have no doubt that even a great cultivator in the reincarnation developing realm would not be able to resist this attack. That little bastard was going to be killed. They were excited. However, before they could rejoice, their bodies stiffened, and a scene that they would never forget appeared in their vision. Lin Sun pulled the bow and arrow, and his handsome figure suddenly became as imposing as a demon god. A terrifying and indescribable aura erupted from the bow and arrow in his hand. Boom! The world seemed to collapse, and a terrifying scene of the sun falling into the blue sky and the golden crow crying blood in the blue sea appeared. There, wind and thunder surged, as if there were ancient gods and demons roaring. Because it was so shocking, the world showed signs of a catastrophe like the end of the world. Boom! They could clearly see a pitch-black arrow shooting out, like the first light that tore through the eternal night. Near the arrow, the void turned into broken turbulence, and time seemed to be pierced. In front of it, the light of Tao released by Sun Heng was like a piece of paper. With a bang, it was torn to pieces and turned into a rain of light that sprinkled all over the sky. Time seemed to be stagnant and fixed at this moment. Sun Heng's expression was indifferent and cold, with a kind of domineering momentum, but when he saw Lin Sun pull the bow and arrow, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression changed slightly. And when Lin Sun pulled the bowstring that was so red that it seemed to be soaked in blood, his heart trembled inexplicably, and his hair stood on end. He sensed a kind of extreme danger. This surprised him, and he couldn't believe it. At the instant this arrow was shot out, he was unable to maintain his composure any longer. His expression changed greatly, and he almost cried out involuntarily. He didn't have the slightest bearing of a supreme being any longer, and his entire body trembled like a frightened rabbit. He was scared out of his wits. He sensed the horror and completely realized that he was careless this time. He didn't underestimate his opponent, but underestimated the treasure in his hand. It was like a dragon in the sky suddenly discovering that a tiny ant on the ground was holding a peerless sword that could kill a dragon. Run! Sun Hung was indeed an old monster among the half-step king warriors. His battle instinct and rich experience had allowed him to react immediately. However, carelessness was still carelessness. A small mistake might not have been a big deal in the past, but at this moment it was enough to be fatal, because this was the insignificant bow and the blue sky arrow. This pair of mysterious bows and arrows had slaughtered many half-step King Realm warriors in the bloodthirsty battlefield and killed the real King Realm warriors. With this pair of bow and arrow, Zhao Xingye, the bloodthirsty queen, had killed many half-step king in the bloodthirsty battlefield and forced the whole barbarian army to stop fighting. Now Lin Sun used this pair of bow and arrow for the first time in the ancient desolation domain. If he didn't kill his opponent, he would feel sorry for this pair of treasures. Boom! The sound of the explosion was like thunder. The blazing light of destruction rushed into the sky, dispersed the curtain of night, spread in all directions, and shocked the world. Sun Heng's body was killed in an instant. His flesh and blood were shattered, and he was annihilated in the destructive light. At the moment of his death, this old fellow who was only a thread away from the King Realm didn't even have the chance to let out a shrill cry before he vanished without a trace. The terrifying aftershock was still spreading out, and it crushed the mountains in the distance. The ancient trees and forests were instantly transformed into ashes, and the ground even split open to reveal numerous cracks that were like ravines and abysses. All of this was horrifying, and it caused everyone to feel as if they'd witnessed the arrival of the end of the world. Plop, Plop, Hua Qinqi and the other important figures of the Spirit Pearl sect were struck by the terrifying aftershock and were sent flying more than 30 meters away. They coughed up blood and were in a sorry state. However, because of this, their hearts were struck by an unprecedented fear, and it caused them to feel despair, helplessness, and utter stupefaction. As the one and only supreme elder of Spirit Pearl sect, and an old fellow at the half-step King Realm who was renowned throughout the Fire Spirit Prefecture, Sun Hung had been killed by a single arrow right before their eyes. The shock and impact they felt from this almost caused them to collapse. Dead? They couldn't accept this cruel reality. At the same time, Lin Sun's face turned pale. His body showed signs of running out of energy, and his strength was almost exhausted. This was the backfire. He had been familiar with it for a long time, so he didn't panic. He had secretly prepared several pieces of spiritual marrow to absorb energy and replenish himself. However, unlike in the past, there was a trace of faint fierce intent in his heart this time, which constantly impacted his state of mind and soul. He even couldn't bear it. Bloodthirsty Queen is right. I can't use the insignificant bow easily anymore. Otherwise, the fierce chi in it will be triggered and lead to unpredictable future troubles. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with cold light. He ran meditating magic to resist and resolve the fierce chi that was impacting his mind. Zhao Xingye once reminded him that this bow had been stained with the blood of a saint and had killed the soul of a saint. In ancient times, it could be called a peerless murderous weapon. However, it had been seriously damaged now, and there was too much fierce chi and blood accumulated in it. Sooner or later, it would burst out completely. At that time, when Zhao Xingye killed the fire barbarian Flame King, a strand of the resentment of a saint before his death had seeped out from the bow, and merely a strand of it had almost caused a top figure in the King Realm like Zhao Xingye to suffer misfortune. It was easy to imagine how terrifying such a ferocious aura was. Now, Lin Sun also experienced this, but what he felt was only a wisp of faintly discernible ferocity. But even so, his chi was still affected and almost collapsed, which was extremely terrible. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun fully realized the horror of the insignificant bow. It would have unpredictable effects, not only on the enemy but also on the user. If I have a chance, I must go to Sunset Tang Valley, known as the Sacred Place, to find the lost spirit of the insignificant Bao and completely solve the hidden danger of the Bao. Lin Sun took a deep breath and remembered the guidance given by Zhao Xingye. Insignificant Bao was a real psychic saint treasure, which was different from ordinary saint treasures. There was a spirit in it, which was enough to suppress the fierce qi and blood inside the Bao. However, in the endless years, the insignificant Bao had been seriously damaged, and the spirit was lost somewhere. If he wanted to find the spirit, he could go to Sunset Tang Valley and find some clues. A painful groan came from afar, which made Lin Sun wake up from his thoughts. Then his black eyes became cold, and he looked into the distance quietly. There, Hua Qinqi and other big shots of Lingji sect were still alive. Although they were in a miserable state, Lin Sun put away his bow and arrow, walked in the void and approached them. Although he had consumed a lot of physical strength, Lin Sun was confident that he could kill these guys with all his strength. Woo! However, before Lin Sun got close, a sharp dog bark suddenly sounded in the direction of Yen capital. It was like the cry of ghosts and the howl of wolves, which was very creepy in the night. Lin Sun's face was a little gloomy. Looking at Hua Qinqi and others in the distance, he finally resisted the urge to stay and kill the enemies and decided to leave immediately. If he guessed right, the strong men of Black Demon Dog tribe had been alarmed and were coming here at full speed. After all, the noise just now was too big, and Yen capital was not far from here. Some people with ulterior motives would inevitably be alarmed and come to find out what was going on. Lin Sun was not alone now. He had Xia Xiaochong with him. For the sake of the girl's safety, Lin Sun could not take any more risks. If you dare to leak what happened just now, I will destroy the whole Lingji sect in the future. Lin Sun's black eyes were as cold as a sharp blade, and he took a deep look at Hua Qinqi. At that moment, Hua Qinqi felt cold all over as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His heart had long been drowned by fear. Now, after hearing Lin Sun's threat, he almost collapsed. He knew that since the young man dared to say so, he definitely dared to do it. Swish! Without hesitation, Lin Sun's figure flickered and disappeared into the mountains, shrouded in the night in the distance. He let us go? Han Yenke couldn't believe it. He had lost an arm, a bloody hole in his abdomen, broken bones in many places, and disheveled hair. He looked miserable. The others were also confused. They didn't know why Lin Sun would show mercy and spare their lives at this time. Only Hua Qinqi guessed something. With a livid face, he said, "Everyone, you all heard what I said just now. For the survival of our Lingji sect, I don't want any accidents to happen. So, let's just pretend that what happened today never happened." Never happened? The expressions of the others changed. They were filled with fear, confusion, anger, and disappointment. The Supreme Elder Sun Heng was already dead, and they still had to pretend that nothing happened? Hua Qinqi was actually in more pain than they were. But he knew that if they didn't do this, their Lingji sect would be in danger of being destroyed at any time. We can only accept this. We can only blame ourselves for offending a young man we shouldn't have. Hua Qingqi's eyes were lost as he murmured, "He's not a peerless talent of the younger generation. He's obviously a heaven-defying genius that can't be measured by common sense. Unless he's dead, we can only accept our defeat today." At the end of his words, his expression suddenly became extremely firm and resolute. Yes, they had to accept their defeat. Their Lingji sect might be a deterrent in the Fire Spirit province, but in the entire West Heng region, they were just a small sect. They were not qualified to offend a heaven-defying genius who was destined to rise in the ancient Desolation realm. Otherwise, they would be doomed to be annihilated, as that young man had said. "Over here." A cold voice rang out in the distance, awakening Hua Qinqi and the others who had a heavy heart. They looked up. They saw a group of black soul riders bathed in black flames silently rushing towards them from afar. The night was as dark as ink. They were like a group of demons from the netherworld. Chapter 8:12. What happened here? A group of experts from the Black Sea Tengu clan sat high on their spiritual mount. Their eyes were cold as they surrounded the area. The night was dark and the atmosphere was oppressive. In the distance, some of their companions were still investigating the devastated battlefield, searching for clues. If the Wind Whisperer tribe was said to be the most well-informed tribe in the ancient Desolation region, then the Black Sea Tengu tribe's acute sense of smell was unparalleled in the world. Almost no one who was targeted by them could escape. The one who spoke was a young man in a black cloak. He had fair skin and a handsome face. His eyes were demonic and frightening, with a sense of coldness and cruelty. His name was Godong, and he was the leader of this team. The expressions of Hua Qingqi and the others changed, and they shivered. They did not expect that the devil-like young man had just left, and an even more ferocious group had arrived. The Black Sea Tengu clan. This was a huge clan that made countless experts in the ancient Desolation realm pale at the mention of it. Their methods were bloody and cruel, and they killed without any scruples. They could be said to be guilty of many crimes. Even some ancient orthodoxies were unwilling to have anything to do with this clan. Poof! Seeing that no one answered, Godong smiled slightly. The next moment, he suddenly raised the long and narrow blood saber in his hand that was covered with sharp saw-teeth. With a flash of blood-red light, a bloody head flew into the air. It was a reincarnation developing realm cultivator who had been seriously injured in the battle just now. He was on the verge of death, and could not resist at all, so he was killed directly. Blood flowed like a waterfall, and it was scarlet and hot. Hua Qingqi and the others screamed and trembled with anger. They did not expect that the other party would kill without a word. The coldness and bloodthirstiness of the Black Sea Tengu clan was evident from this. Our time is very precious. I hope you can cooperate. Godong's voice was low, and it carried a wisp of cruelty and coldness. Otherwise, all of you will probably be unable to survive. Hua Qingqi's eyes almost split apart from rage, and he was furious to the extreme. However, in the end he sighed dejectedly and said, "We intended to set up an ambush here, but we never expected that we'd draw a mysterious expert over, causing us to suffer heavy losses. Even a supreme elder of the sect was unfortunately killed." He looked sad, angry and aggrieved, but he didn't mention Lin Sun. He just replaced the murderer of Sun Huan with a mysterious master. Puff! Godong was expressionless when he heard this. He waved his saber and chopped off another head. "I want to hear the truth." Another person had died. This caused Hua Qingqi and the others to be on the verge of collapse, and they felt unprecedented despair and rage. The Spirit Pearl sect could be considered as a great sect in the Fire Spirit Prefecture. Yet now, an elder of their sect had been mercilessly beheaded like a blade of grass, and this was undoubtedly the greatest contempt and trampling upon them. Kill! Our Spirit Pearl sect's supreme elder is dead, and we've suffered heavy losses. I don't want to live anymore. Hua Qingqi suddenly stood up and glared at Godong. Godong's demonic eyes narrowed, and then he smiled and said, "You're right. If it were me, I wouldn't protect the enemy at a time like this either." As he spoke, he waved his hand, and one of his subordinates who was investigating the battlefield hurried over. "How is it?" Godong asked. The subordinate said swiftly, "According to the traces left behind here, we can be sure that a half-step king realm expert died here just now, and the culprit ought to have utilized some sort of terrifying treasure to kill him with a single strike." Godong was slightly moved, and a cold light surged in his eyes. No wonder there was such a huge commotion just now. So it was a battle between Half-Step King. "Can you confirm the murderer's identity?" The subordinate shook his head. "There are too few clues. I can't be sure." Right at this moment, a Black Sea Tengu powerhouse on the battlefield seemed to have discovered something and called out, "Master Godong, there's a trace of that girl's aura here." Instantly, the group of Black Sea Tengu powerhouses on their spirit mounts became restless, and terrifying killing intent burst out from their bodies. Meanwhile, Godong's eyes immediately locked onto Hua Qingqi, and he took out a scroll in his hand. He unfolded it in the void and said, "Old man, have you seen this girl before?" On the scroll was the image of a young and beautiful girl. Her eyes were big and clear, and she looked adorable and innocent. Hua Qingqi and the others were stunned, feeling puzzled and incredulous. Could it be that the Black Sea Tengu powerhouses had appeared here just to kill a girl like this? Only Han Yang's expression became a little unnatural. He recognized that this was Xia Shaochong. Almost at the same time, he felt a sharp and eerie gaze instantly lock onto him, causing his body to stiffen, and he cursed inwardly. Godong said expressionlessly, "Speak." It was just 2 words, but there was a suffocating pressure that made Han Yenke almost subconsciously say, "Her name is Xia Shaochong, and she's from the Starry Vault Dao sect. I've seen her once during the sect trials in the fire spirit state a few days ago." Godong stared at Han Yenke for a while before retracting his gaze, and he immediately ordered, "Send a message to the young master. The target has appeared here, and she didn't escape with Lin Wenjun." Swoosh! Not long after, a dazzling blood-colored firework shot into the sky, incomparably beautiful in the night. This was the spiritual blood flower, a treasure unique to the Black Sea Tengu race, and it had the magical effect of sending messages from 1,000 miles away. In just a short while, a black prodigy was carried by 8 Black Sea Tengu powerhouses, and it traversed through the void. "Greetings, young master." Immediately, everyone, including Godong, stopped what they were doing and knelt on the ground. The scene was extremely solemn. "That little girl escaped from here?" An indifferent and elegant voice sounded from among the black prodigies. "That should be the case. Haha, that woman, Lin Wenjun, really refuses to give up. Does she think that so long as she's alive, she'll have a chance to change the fate of her race? Unfortunately, the karmic luck of the Green Hill Sky Fox clan has come to an end, and they're bound to be helpless." A carefree laughter sounded from among the black prodigies. "Moreover, with Lord Tian taking action this time, that Lin Wenjun will definitely be dead. Young master, according to our analysis, that girl probably hasn't gone far. Moreover, a battle occurred here just now, and a mysterious figure that seems to be at the Half-Step King realm appeared." Godong said, "We suspect that it's very likely that it was this mysterious figure that took the girl away." "Half-Step King realm?" A surprised voice sounded from among the black prodigies. "I never expected that Lin Wenjun would actually be able to invite a half-step King realm expert when she's already in such a difficult situation. However, this sort of struggle is bound to be futile. Not to mention a half-step King realm expert, even a true King realm expert would have to pay with his life if he dared to obstruct us." These words were spoken very casually, yet they revealed a formless, disdainful might that caused one's heart to tremble. No matter what, this girl still has the body of the Black Fox ancestral blood. This kind of physique is extremely rare, and throughout the countless years, only a few people in the entire Green Hill Sky Fox clan possess this kind of physique. Once she rises, she's bound to possess immeasurable and terrifying might. The young master said unhurriedly, "Fortunately, this girl hasn't awakened this kind of power. Although she can't be considered to be much of a threat, she's still a hidden danger in the end, and we must eliminate her this time." At this point, he didn't hesitate and ordered, "Let's begin. This girl is already about to become a sore point for those old monsters in the clan, and they're all anxiously waiting for our good news." Boom! In the next moment, the group of Black Sea Sky Dog clan experts moved, and like ghosts from hell, they surrounded the black palanquin as they soared into the sky and flashed towards the boundless forest in the distance. Only Hua Qingqi and the others remained where they were. They'd witnessed everything, and they'd originally been trembling with fear, thinking that they were destined to suffer today. But they'd never thought that from the beginning to the end, they were completely ignored like air. I didn't expect that we could survive this time just because they never took us seriously, Hua Qingqi said bitterly, looking haggard. The others also had hollow eyes. Today was like a nightmare for them. It was so cruel and heavy that they still couldn't accept it until now. And the cause of all this was just a trace of greed in their hearts. They didn't know whether to regret or hate. Perhaps this was the price they had to pay for being greedy? But the price was too high. The mountains stretched on like a giant halberd in the sky, vast and boundless. There were many treasured places with beautiful mountains and beautiful rivers, but more of them were barren mountains and unruly rivers, showing a primitive atmosphere. Compared with the city, the forest outside the wilderness was undoubtedly dangerous. Fierce beasts lurked, fierce birds inhabited, and many unknown disasters were hidden in it. It was mysterious and dangerous. Lin Sun sat cross-legged on a beautiful mountain peak, meditating to restore his strength. This mountain was not high, but it was quiet and refined, with verdant ancient pines, waterfalls and flowing springs. The misty silver spiritual energy permeated the air, making it a treasure place for cultivation. This place was originally occupied by a white python. When Lin Sun resisted it, he didn't need to do anything at all. His aura alone made the python, which had already opened its spiritual wisdom, sense the danger and flee in panic. Lin Sun looked solemn, with his mouth and nose exuding brilliant rays of light. His whole body was steaming with Taoist aura, his pores relaxed, and his qi was boiling. In his hands, pieces of middle-grade spiritual marrow turned into powder one after another, but he didn't notice it at all. At this moment, his mind was empty, and his spirit was in perfect harmony with his body. His body was shining with a kind of ethereal charm. In his body, the spiritual energy that was almost exhausted was recovering at an astonishing speed. Like a roaring tide, it surged around his body. Compared with high-grade spiritual crystals, the power contained in middle-grade spiritual marrow was undoubtedly purer and greater, which also greatly accelerated Lin's absorption and refining speed. It used to take 6 to 10 hours to recover, but now it could be shortened to 2 hours. However, although the middle-grade spiritual marrow was good, it was too expensive. For Lin Sun, it was almost a luxury. It was okay to use it at the critical moment. If it was used as a daily thing for cultivation, Lin Sun's family would not be able to afford it. Suddenly, Lin Sun, who was in the middle of cultivation, had a warning sign in his heart. Someone was spying on him in the far distance, and he caught it immediately. Chapter 8:13. Lin Sun's soul was so powerful that it was beyond imagination. In an instant, he even clearly sensed that a figure was concealed within an expanse of lush bushes around 10 kilometers away. The man's eyes were cold and his nostrils were large. He was sniffing all kinds of scents in the air with a secret method. Finally, he looked at the mountain where Lin Sun was. Obviously, this man had determined Lin Sun's whereabouts by his sense of smell. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and instantly remembered the rumors about the Black Demon Dog tribe. This tribe was famous for their keen sense of smell. What a dog's nose! Lin Sun quietly stopped practicing and frowned. He realized that the fight with the people of Lingji sect had undoubtedly alarmed the strong of the Black Demon Dog tribe. Then, Lin Sun sensed that the guy hiding in the distance took out a pitch-black jade slip with blood. What was this? Although Lin Sun couldn't recognize it, he instinctively sensed that something was wrong. Whoosh! The next moment, his figure disappeared on the spot. He ran ice drake steps at full speed and rushed over without concealing his breath. Boom! Lin Sun covered the distance of more than 3 kilometers in the blink of an eye. The Black Sea Tengu seemed to be alarmed. His reaction wasn't slow as he immediately rushed up and fled into the distance. But he was obviously a beat too late. With a swoosh, the broken sword pierced through his back and made a bloody hole. He screamed and staggered to the ground. At the same time, Lin Sun floated down and kicked on the guy's back, saying, "Tell me, do you want to tell me or let me do it myself? Little bastard, how dare you hurt me?" It was a young man in black with a thin face and big nostrils. He stared at Lin Sun with hatred. But before he could finish, Lin Sun slapped him on the head, making him see stars and almost break his skull. Then, Lin Sun started to torture this guy with the cruel torture he learned from the bloodthirsty camp. After a while, the young man in black twitched on the ground. His face was pale and cold sweat flowed down his forehead like a waterfall. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were empty and confused, showing signs of breaking down due to extreme pain. At this moment, he yearned for death like never before because the torture from before had simply made him feel like he was in hell, and he was tormented by boundless pain. Without any accident, Lin Sun soon got everything he wanted to know. Puff! A god-devouring beetle flashed out and silently bore into the black-clothed young man's body, and then it completely devoured his soul, causing him to perish on the spot. After that, he transformed into his true form. Shockingly, he was a black-colored dog that had a body like a calf. His pupils were like copper bells and were extremely scarlet red. His fur was smooth and glossy, his 4 hooves were strong and powerful, and his mouth of snow-white and ghastly fangs were an entire foot long. This was the true appearance of the Black Nightmare Tengu. Whoosh! Lin Sun took the black dog and disappeared. In front of a clear mountain stream, a bonfire was burning fiercely. Roasted meat was being skewered on a grill. The meat was glossy and emitted an exceptionally tempting aroma. This was the meat of the Black Nightmare Tengu, and it could be considered a mutated breed among dogs. The meat contained copious amounts of blood, energy, and essence, and when roasted, it was undoubtedly a rare delicacy. In front of the bonfire, Lin Sun was lost in thought. He had already gotten what he wanted to know, but the truth surprised him a little. This time, the Black Nightmare Tengu tribe had dispatched more than 100 elite top forces to Yen capital. Among them, there were even 2 half-step kings and 1 real king. Apart from that, a direct descendant of the Black Nightmare Tengu tribe had also come along. Or rather, the leader of this operation was this direct descendant. His name was Go Shushing, and he was called Young Master. In the Black Nightmare Tengu tribe, which was so large that it could be found all over the ancient Desolation territory, he was considered a top heavenly talent of the younger generation. Go Shushing was not simple. According to the internal evaluation of the Black Nightmare Tengu tribe, he could be called a 1,000-men slayer level heavenly talent. What was a 1,000-men slayer? It referred to the fact that Go Shushing had used his own strength to personally kill thousands of enemies who were stronger than him. Cultivation did not represent one's true combat strength. For Go Shushing to be able to do this, it undoubtedly proved that he was a fierce character who could kill opponents of a higher level. That bloody and shocking battle record was the best proof. Because of this, Go Shushing's status in the tribe was quite high, and he was called Young Master. Whenever he went out, he would be accompanied by the elders of the tribe. It was said that among the younger generation of the Black Nightmare Tengu tribe, there was even a peerless heavenly talent with the title of 10,000 enemies, but no one knew about it. Of course, this news was not too shocking to Lin Sun. What shocked him was that the ultimate goal of Go Shushing and his people was not to deal with Lin Wenjun, but to kill Xia Xiaochong, who was by Lin Wenjun's side. Because Xia Xiaochong was also a descendant of the Green Mound Divine Fox, and his bloodline was the purest. He was born with the Black Fox ancestral blood. Lin Sun did not know how incredible this bloodline talent was, but he knew that once Xia Xiaochong awakened this bloodline power, he would have a terrifying and boundless power, which would be an unimaginable threat to the Black Nightmare Tengu tribe. Because of this, Xia Xiaochong had become a thorn in their side, and they wanted to wipe her out completely to avoid future troubles. The reason why they mobilized so many people this time, not hesitating to send 2 half-step kings and a real king, was all related to killing Xia Xiaochong. This girl's identity is so complicated. As Lin Sun thought about it, he picked up the dog meat that had been roasted and ate it. The delicious taste made Lin Sun move. It was really delicious. The meat was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, containing the essence of fragrance. It was fragrant and chewy, which could be called a peerless delicacy. If it were someone else, he would have been worried and lost his appetite after learning this news. But Lin Sun sat by the clear stream and wolfed down the meat, drinking a few mouthfuls of wine from time to time, as if nothing had happened. He looked relaxed and carefree. Before long, a piece of black dog meat was stuffed into Lin Sun's stomach, leaving only a pile of bones on the ground. Then, he stood up and exhaled a long breath of turbid air. His whole body was full of breath, as if he had inexhaustible strength. Looks like this black dog meat can be used as a great medicine for cultivation as well. Moreover, it tastes very delicious. Lin Sun smacked his lips, and then he smiled and muttered to himself. It's good this way. At least I can eat another mouthful of black dog meat on the way. It's really worth it. Lin Sun didn't delay any longer, and he turned around and left. According to Lin Wenjun's instructions, he had to send Xia Xiaochong to the Green Hill Mountain in the Phoenix Perch Province. When he set out, Lin Sun found out that the Phoenix Perch Province was extremely far away from the Fire Spirit Province, and there were a few tens of provinces between them. It was an entire 500,000 kilometers away. Even if he relied on the speed of the vast universe arc, it would at least take 10 days. However, Lin Sun didn't do that because he had other plans. 4 hours later, a group of Black Sea Tengu clan experts appeared by the side of the clear stream. When they saw the pile of snow-white bones that had been eaten clean on the ground, they were instantly angered to the point their faces turned green, and they let out howls that sounded like ghosts wailing and wolves howling, shocking all the living beings in the nearby area to the point their hearts trembled. Damn it! Who dares to treat the experts of our clan as food? Who dares to be so arrogant? He must be tired of living. These Black Tengu clan experts were used to running amok. In the past, they were the ones who slaughtered their opponents in cold blood. Who would have thought that there would be someone in this world who dared to roast and eat them? This was definitely the greatest provocation to their dignity, and they could not be forgiven. Don't let me catch him. Otherwise, I'll make him experience what it means to wish he was dead. Go Dong's expression was cold, and his face was ashen. Don't tell the young master about this. Otherwise, no one will be able to bear the consequences if the young master gets angry. Go Dong took a deep breath and instructed, clean up this place and continue to search for traces of the enemy. No matter who he is, he must atone for his crimes with death, since he dares to go against our Black Tengu clan. Yes, the other Black Tengu clan experts received the order and set off murderously. Any opponent that they targeted had never escaped their pursuit. Including this time, they had already locked onto the opponent's aura. It wouldn't be long before they killed him. The sky was bright and the morning glow was dazzling. The morning light filled the air, and the forest was covered in gold. Ferocious birds chirped and demonic beasts roared. A waterfall that looked like a white dragon poured down from a cliff thousands of feet high, producing a thunderous roar. Lin Sun stood with his hands behind his back at the peak of a mountain. His slender figure was like a pine tree at the edge of a cliff. His eyes looked at the mountains and rivers in the distance, and he saw clouds rising and rosy. The mountains were like halberds, vast and boundless. But in Lin Sun's eyes it was a different scene. Profound and obscure markings appeared in his eyes, and they shot out 2 beams of divine light. In his field of vision, numerous magnificent airflows appeared within the group of mountains. Some were as black as ink, hideous like a ghostly fog. They covered the sky and the sun, and the atmosphere was awe-inspiring. Some were as brilliant as gold and shrouded in an illusory luster. The atmosphere was magnificent, and auspicious lights danced in the air. But most of them showed a grayish color, like smoke or fog, and were ordinary. The ones as black as ink are the miasma in the mountains. There must be highly toxic things or fierce demonic beasts. The ones as bright as gold are one of the treasured lights of spiritual clouds. This phenomenon indicates that there must be spiritual mines buried in the mountains, Lin soon meditated. The colorful airflows were the atmosphere of mountains and rivers. It was a kind of momentum that belonged to heaven and earth. Even practitioners could rarely identify and perceive it carefully. But in Lin Sun's eyes, he could see through its falsehood and see through its essence in an instant. This was the magical effect of the wind-mocking eyes. Of course, this was just the simplest and most superficial application. The core meaning of the wind-mocking eyes was to explore the acupoints and find the pulse. Lin Sun's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he felt a stabbing pain. He noticed that there was a magnificent atmosphere on the distant mountains. It was like a rainbow rising to the sky. There was a kind of harmony between yin and yang, and the momentum of a dragon and a tiger. It was extremely extraordinary. Is that a great treasure land? Lin Sun thought of something, and his figure flashed and disappeared.